Dark Souls 1 is almost 14 years old now, and I'm now going to be making a beginner's guide for this. Now you might seem it's like somewhat obsolete because there are plenty of beginner guides out there, but some of them might be a bit older or made by people that didn't really have as many hours in the game, whereas me myself, I have like over 1,000 hours, so there's like a lots of things that I actually can go share with you guys. And with how successful my Elden Ring beginner's guide was, I might as well just make it for all the other Souls games too. Now just like that Elden Ring video, it's not just going to be a beginner's guide, but it's also going to be somewhat of a small walkthrough. No, I'm not going to actually do an entire walkthrough series. I'm just going to go through the first couple of areas, so I can just further explain all the different mechanics, all the unique interactions, but I also am going to break down how the weapons work, how to make a build, and actually will set you guys up with a really nice build, also give you lots of really powerful weapon options, gain access to lots of healing, have different NPC vendors unlocked, and basically just have you set up really nicely to the point where it's almost impossible to mess up the entire playthrough. Now this video is going to assume that you don't know anything about the Souls series at all. I'm just going to assume that Dark Souls 1 is just your first Souls game, and I'm not going to be making references or comparisons to any of the other Souls games, as it might be a bit confusing if you haven't played those ones. Now, if you have played the other Souls games, this video is still going to be a great benefit, but just thought to let you guys know that now. Now, to get into the character creator, which class should you select? Honestly, it does not matter. Starting classes only really affects early game and min-maxing your build, because everything that you can get off these starting classes are pretty accessible early on in the game anyway. And let's just say that you actually wanted to go with a sorcerer build, you could literally start with any character and just end up switching to sorceries later on anyway. But the thing is, if you actually had a particular build in mind, like if you did want to go with a sorcerer, you're probably best off picking the sorcerer because it does start you off with the items that you need, and also it does give you a decent amount of intelligence, which you're mostly going to be spec'd into, but you could very well just end up speccing into intelligence with the warrior class and end up being the same. Now the differences being is that there might be like more of a chance that you have wasted stats, but that's like, it's only really a few points difference. It's honestly not that big of a deal. We're just going to be going with the warrior class in this instance because it is relatively balanced stats, so there is like a less chance of actually having wasted stats depending on which build that you actually were going to go into. And the warrior actually does start off with like a decent shield and a decent weapon that we're not going to really be using much because we are going to actually switch it before even killing our first boss, not including the tutorial boss. Now when it comes to the starting item or the starting gift, it is basically going to be the master key every single time. Some of the other items are like somewhat okay, but the master key literally gives us access to like mid-game locations right at the beginning of the game, so we actually can go grab a bunch of items without having to kill anything, which is really nice. You can go ahead and make your character however you see fit, and we're just going to go ahead and start. Now after watching a couple of cutscenes, the game is going to start off us in this little like jail cell. Those white glowing things on the ground are going to be your items. You can just go ahead and pick those up every single time that you see one. In this instance, it gave us a key to open up the door. Now these little orange things on the ground are these messages. These are the ones that the game actually left on the ground. It's basically just to tell you the controls, which is like, you know, R1 or RB to attack, R2 or RT to actually do the strong attack or the heavy attack, circle to roll, holding onto circle or holding onto B is actually to sprint, R3 to lock on. Basically just pretty simple stuff. I'm not going to really go too in depth with some of the controls because there is lots more important stuff to talk about. One thing that the game actually does not tell you though is how to slide down a ladder, which is just holding onto circle without actually moving any of the joysticks. So just don't move the left joystick and just hold circle and you can slide down a ladder. Pretty cool. Now we're going to be reaching our first bonfire. Now bonfires serve as a checkpoint. You have to rest at them to actually activate the checkpoint, and what it does do is replenish your health, replenish all of your main healing items, replenish your spells, but it also does revive all the enemies in the area, actually in the entire game really, except for bosses, and some like unique mini bosses as well don't get respawned. There is going to be a door right here that we cannot open right now. This is something that you're probably going to have to get used to. There's going to be lots of doors that are locked via keys or just cannot be opened from one side. And that is because a lot of the level design in these games just have like these shortcuts that wrap back around to the main bonfire to actually just, you know, not really have a bunch of different bonfires or a bunch of different checkpoints littered throughout the entire game, but more so just having like well-placed shortcuts. Now we're going to go up against our first boss, which is actually chilling right at the top of that roof. He's just going to drop down. Now we aren't supposed to kill him at this point of the game, as the game does tell us, get away. Because the reason being, as you might have noticed, we actually don't have our weapon and shield that we actually chose with our starting class, and it gives us this broken straight sword, which is doing 2 damage. So yeah, we're going to have to completely avoid him for now through this door in the left. And there will be another bonfire here. Now, don't get used to having lots of bonfires like placed like this. You're very rarely going to be in a situation to where like you just walk 10 steps and find another bonfire, but it just puts another bonfire here because, you know, the door is locked. Now we're going to be getting our items. to actually go ahead and help kill that boss. Here is the shield. And to equip the shield, it has to go into your left hand. There actually is like icons to indicate where to put the shield, where to put the weapon. You can put the shield in your right hand, but you're not going to be able to block with it unless it's two-handed. And you can put a weapon into your left hand, but you're going to be losing out on your heavy attack. The game just tells you how to actually equip it if you're confused by that. And that should be our weapon back there. Not going to bother killing this guy with his broken straight sword. So I'm just going to go pick up the longsword, equip that one, and now we can go kill him. Now we have the longsword, which is just a regular generic straight sword. Has a pretty decent moveset. The one-handed light attacks are just nice horizontal swipes. You pretty much, in most cases, are just going to be primarily using light attacks. The heavy attack is a nice poke. Now, the good thing about having a poking heavy attack or poking attacks in general, especially in this game, your weapons deflect off the walls a lot. So if you're in tight corridors like this, you'll be doing a lot of that. And you'll be missing all of your enemies. But if you actually have a poking attack, your weapon is a lot less likely to actually deflect off the wall. Also, if you have vertical movesets, which if you have this thing two-handed by clicking triangle or Y, it would actually do the two-handed movesets, which makes it do a bit more damage. Typically might be slower for some weapons, but in this instance, it gives us the vertical movesets, so the weapons won't really deflect off the wall as much. So any single time you're in tight corridors, definitely try and use attacks of a weapon that either use poking attacks or vertical swipes. Now, at this point, the game is telling us how to roll or to backstep. So to move, obviously with the left stick, and then when you click B or circle, it actually does do a roll. Now, the roll actually does have invincibility frames. So throughout that rolling animation, you're not going to be able to take any damage at all. Now, when it does come to backstepping, it is pretty much just useless because backstepping does not give you iframes unless you pick up a particular ring, but you don't really have to worry about that. So for the most part, if you wanted to dodge attacks, it is primarily going to be the roll. Now, there are 3 different types of roll in this game. There is the fast roll, medium roll, and the heavy roll. And obviously, dependent on the roll will be dependent on how far the actual roll goes, how quick the recovery frames are, and how many iframes or invincibility frames you do have. Now, currently, we have a medium roll, and medium roll in this game is really not that good. Like, it really is sluggish, as you can tell, and the recovery frames are really long, and it doesn't really serve as well as a dodge. The only reason you would be able to get a medium roll is because you want to be actually have heavier armor equipped or use a heavier weapon, and you can't really afford to get a light roll. And with heavier armor, typically you actually get more poise, which is like the ability to tank more attacks without actually getting staggered, which we can talk about that later. But in this instance, we're going to go ahead and take off our helmet and our chest piece so we actually can gain the ability to light roll. And as you can see, this roll is a lot more smooth. You can spam it a lot more. You get a bit more iframes, and it's just going to be a much smoother experience overall. Now, to gain the light roll, you do have to be under a 25% equipment load. As you see right here, unfortunately, the game doesn't actually tell us a percentage, but below 25% is the fast roll, between 25 and 50% is the medium roll, and above 50% is going to be your heavy roll. And if you go above 100%, then you can't even roll at all. In fact, you can't even sprint, which is actually another thing. If you are like fast rolling, you actually do get a faster sprint. So I think it's just better overall to just have the fast roll over the medium roll. I honestly don't really like doing medium roll at all, unless you are going with like a larger weapon and you're trading out with bosses. Now, if you did want to know, when it comes to the equipment load, the only things that actually do weigh something in this game are going to be the weapons and the armor. Things like consumables and items, arrows and stuff like that, that actually don't weigh anything at all. It's purely the stuff that you have equipped here, and you can tell how much something weighs by if you just go click square on the actual item itself, and it'll tell you the weight of the weapon or the armor piece. Now we're going to be getting our first healing item. There is actually a big ball up those stairs. If you just continue to walk ahead, the big ball is going to hit you. It's not going to kill you at all, but you can just go bait it out and just walk along the right side. You can actually roll off the left side as well. But yeah, the ball is going to open up this wall here to go let us gain access to this NPC, which this NPC is going to give us our healing item. I'm not going to go exhaust it. We're just going to exhaust his dialogue. I'm not going to actually listen to anything that he actually says. Now, this is a door that wraps back around to that bonfire that I was talking about. Now, just to show you an example, we do have our healing flask now, the ESTUS flask. This is the main healing item. You're just going to leave this equipped here at all times. And when you click square or X of the Xbox controls, it is going to use the heal. Now, one thing you may notice is that it is a really long animation and you can't move at all while using it. So it's not something that you can spam at all times throughout a fight. You need to be able to have like an opening to actually use your heal. But yeah, resting at the bonfire will actually replenish the Estus flask. And at the moment, we can only hold up to 5. But at the end of this guide, I'm going to actually give you guys access to 20 healing flasks, which is basically broken in this game. Now, when it does come to the combats, shields are very important, especially early game. It is very beginner friendly because as you see, a lot of enemies' attacks deflect off the shield, and you can go ahead and just counter them with your just regular attacks, whatever it may be. Now, shield combat is not really completely necessary, especially like later in the game where like enemy attacks aren't going to be the best thing. This is an instance where you probably want to use poking attacks because, you know, you're next to the wall. If you use a light attack here, it will just deflect off. Projectile attacks move very slowly in this game. You can pretty much just strafe them. You don't have to like dodge them at all. But one mechanic I'm going to tell you about now is the backstab. If you walk directly behind an enemy and click the light attack, it will do this do this different type of attack, a critical attack that makes you do a lot more damage. Typically, only humanoid enemies can actually gain access to a backstab or let you have a backstab option. Larger bosses, it will not be a thing. Now, to get backstabs, it's pretty simple in this game because the enemies are very slow. You can just strafe around most attacks in this game. You just keep strafing to the right because enemies will have the weapon in their right hand. And more likely than not, you probably end up like just missing unless you get stuck in the wall like that. Now, another critical attack is actually going to be the parry. If you have a shield, or actually even you have it barehanded and you click L2, it does parry the enemy's weapon. Now, this is pretty much true for like the same thing as backstabs. It's only really like smaller humanoid enemies that you can really parry. But when you do parry an enemy, which is like basically the exact same time that it's about to hit you, it is like somewhat forgiving. When you do click light attack after getting a successful parry, it does do this riposte, which does even more damage than a backstab. It's like probably the most damage you can get out of a single attack, maybe outside of a plunging attack, which I'll tell you guys about right now, because right now we're actually directly above where the boss is. This is a fog wall, which will end up taking us to the boss. Now, to do a plunging attack, you have to fall off a ledge and click light attack, kind of something like that. There actually is multiple ways to do plunging attacks. That's pretty much the easiest way. You can actually do a jumping attack off a ledge too. And now a jumping attack you do by flicking up and clicking R2, or the heavy attack, and it will do this little jump. It's a bit hard and tricky to pull off sometimes if you're a beginner. Just to keep it simple, just like walk off the ledge and just click light attack. And against some bosses, especially like larger ones, it might have like a unique type of a plunging attack animation. Like this one, it grapples onto its head and it just does a whole bunch of damage, as you see. And compared to like the light attack, yeah, it's not going to be anywhere near as much. So yeah, ripostes, backstabs, plunging attacks, they'll end up doing like the most amount of damage in the game. Now, when it does come to the combat, one thing I want to talk about first is the lock-on feature. Now, locking on in this game is obviously really good. If you're just getting new to the controls, I recommend just locking on. But I would honestly try to get used to not locking on because in this game, there is 4 directional rolling. That means you can only dodge forwards, backwards, left, and right. Now, when you're locked on, this is actually extremely annoying because you can't like, dodge diagonal. And if you're fighting like next to a ledge, having 4 directional rolling is going to kill you like almost every single time. So I would honestly try to get used to not locking on. Because when you're not locking on, you can actually pretty much easily dodge in any single direction because you can face your character in any direction. Whereas for locking on, you're facing forwards. So you're locked into that one area. You also do gain iframes if you do get knocked to the ground. When you're like on the ground, you end up getting some iframes. Kill the boss. Now, in terms of like just getting the most amount of damage possible, just spamming light attacks is going to be the best bet. Very rarely will like spamming heavy attacks end up being the better option. That's typically just having for something that's, if you want to maximize your damage in one hit, then you use the heavy attack. But for the most part, you can just get away with this using the one attack for the entire game, really. Now, one thing that's actually really important that I didn't really mention when it comes to the combat of this game is stamina management. That green bar that you see below the health bar, that is your stamina. Every single action that you do basically consumes a little bit of stamina, like a roll, blocking an attack, attacking, sprinting even, it will drain your stamina. And that is pretty much going to be like the main component when it does come to combat in this game. Managing your stamina is like the most important thing. You want to be like looking at your stamina bar, honestly, just as much as like looking at the enemy's moveset. Because if you end up falling below 0 stamina, you're pretty much invulnerable for like half a second, and that can be the difference to be like dying or just losing. Managing your stamina is very, very important. Basically, at the end of the tutorial now, there's like a little item around here, which is a soul. The soul packets, it just ends up gaining you more souls. Basically, that is just hidden away to just tell you guys that there actually is like, reward to exploration in this game. There's always look around every single corner because you might not know whether you find something cool. Now, this is a little crow's nest here. You can't really do anything with it right now, but there are certain items in the game that you can trade in. You can go ahead and drop them at this crow's nest. And some items, they'll end up being traded for others. In most cases, it ends up being upgrade materials for your weapons. You can just go ahead and walk out on a cutscene or play and take us to the main area or the hub world. Now, you actually can go back to that tutorial section later in the game. Actually, you can go back there right now if you wanted to, but the enemies will actually be scaled for later in the game, and like another boss will end up spawning in. But if you actually did want to go trade in specific items, you can go do that right away if you wanted to get some certain upgrade materials. But anyway, you can completely disregard that. And now we are at Firelink Shrine. This is the main hub world. This is basically the center of the entire game. A lot of areas will end up linking back to this location. For the rest of this bonfire, you might notice that a few things will be different. A couple more options: level up, kindle, and reverse hollowing. Now, just to explain reverse hollowing and kindling real quick, one thing you may notice is that our character does not look in the best state. Definitely does not look anything like what the character creation actually was, and that is because we are currently not human. And to make ourselves human, we need humanity to actually reverse the hollowing. The number that you see in the top left-hand side in the screen right over there has a couple of zeros. That indicates how much humanity you actually do have. Currently we have 0. The way to actually increase your humanity is by 1, killing bosses. Killing a bunch of enemies in one particular area might have a chance of giving you humanity. Killing bosses in co-op, doing some invasions in PvP could give you a humanity, but the most popular way will be actually getting the humanity item and using it. And there is conveniently 3 humanity right here, and the boss that we did kill in the tutorial section did drop a humanity. We're just going to go ahead and use a couple of them. You actually can use this to completely restore your HP, but I definitely would not recommend doing that because these are finite items and you kind of want to save them to actually be in human form. I'm just going to use a couple real quick. We only need to use the one, but I wanted to show you something else as well. Now, the purpose of actually being in human form is that if you did want to engage in co-op, you'll have to be a human, and it also does require human form to kindle a bonfire as well. So co-op also includes online and NPCs. So if you actually did want to summon for a boss, unfortunately you do have to be in human form, which is going to cost you humanity, and they're pretty hard to come by sometimes. Now, one thing you actually can also do while in human form is kindle the bonfire. Now, currently we cannot kindle the bonfire any further because one thing you may have noticed is that we do have 10 ESTUS flasks, and kindling a bonfire lets us hold more. Now, in the previous bonfire that we had in the tutorial, we could only hold up to 5 ESTUS flasks, but this one we can hold 10 because this bonfire is actually already kindled because there actually is a firekeeper nearby to actually tend to this fire, which we can explain that later. But if we actually were to go to like 90% of the bonfires in this game, that would only be able to hold up to 5 ESTUS flasks, but using a kindling or kindling the bonfire, which does cost another humanity, will actually help you hold up to 10. And actually, again, be a specific item that we can get called the Rite of Kindling. We actually can grab that item and hold up to 20 flasks, which in this guide, actually, I'm going to show you how to do that. And very early on in the game, having 20 flasks is pretty broken. When it does come to like leveling up in your main currency, one thing you may notice is that here in the bottom right-hand side, we have 2,284 souls. Now, these souls are your main currency. You use these to level up and buy things off merchants. Now, just to go over the leveling up itself, yes, there are lots of different stats. It might seem a bit daunting, but I'm going to try and explain it the best way I can to make it very simple. Now, the most important stats to worry about is vitality and endurance. Vitality governs your health, your HP. The more you level it up, the more health that you get. This is basically the only way to actually get more HP when it does come to the stats themselves. Now, obviously, every single build that you make, doesn't matter what it is always going to benefit of vitality. This is going to be the stat that you level up the most. You most likely end up finishing your playthrough with like around 35 to 40 vitality, because that actually is one of the soft caps. And endurance is going to be probably the second most important stat because it does govern your stamina and your equipment load. Now, as I mentioned with stamina management is extremely important, and having a large stamina bar means you have more room to work with, and some larger types of weapons will end up costing more stamina as well. So if you actually were to use larger weapons, it's going to be very beneficial to spec into a lot of endurance, especially because it also improves your equipment load. Being able to just wield or just heavier types of armor or heavier types of weapons while still being able to medium roll or light roll is obviously going to be a great benefit. So these are the 2 stats we are going to benefit off of the most. Now, when it does come to your damaging stats, there's going to be 4 damaging stats: strength, dexterity, intelligence, and faith. These are your 4. Now, strength and dexterity are the main 2 when it does come to like the weapons. Strength will typically boost the damage of larger or heavier types of weapons, and dexterity will tend to boost the damage of like smaller and quicker types of weapons, and sometimes you can get some weapons that have like split even scalings in both. It just depends on the weapon. Now, intelligence and faith are typically going to be for your spells. Intelligence will help boost the damage of your sorceries if you do use a catalyst, and faith will actually help boost the damage of your miracles, like your lightning-based spells. But there can be some specific weapons in the game. They're very far and few that actually do scale off intelligence or faith as well. But for the most part, when it does come to weapons, it's pretty much just strength and dexterity. Just to give you guys an example, we currently have the longsword. Now, the damage of the longsword is shown right here. Our weapon 1, this is the total damage. Now, the way to actually break down the damage numbers here, this is going to be the base damage. It says 80. We currently have 80 base damage for the longsword, and we are getting plus 12 based on its scalings, because as you see here, the param bonus, it does get a C scaling in strength and a C scaling in dexterity, meaning when you actually do spec into those stats, you're going to get a bit of a boost. We have 13 dexterity and 13 strength currently, and we are going to get plus 12 due to that bonus that we have going on right here. Now, the thing is, we currently have the weapon at plus 0. It's not upgraded at all. For a normal weapon, you can get it all the way up to plus 15. And when you are at a higher level, it's not only going to improve the base damage, but it's also going to improve the scalings. And when you have higher scalings, you're going to benefit more of going into the damaging stats. So in this instance, going into more strength and dexterity will end up benefiting more with a more upgraded weapon compared to a weapon that was not upgraded. And obviously going into intelligence and faith is not going to do anything because there is no scalings in those stats at all. So with that being said, being that there's actually no benefits, or not much of a benefit to actually go into your damaging stats, for early on in the game, and for pretty much like a quarter of your playthrough, I would just recommend going into health and stamina. I'll do that in a bit, so I still got to explain some other stats. One other thing I do want to talk about is requirements too. As you do see with the weapon, the longsword, 10 strength and a 10 dexterity requirement. And obviously you need to actually meet the requirements for these to actually be able to wield them. We could still have them equipped, but you're going to be doing next to no damage. Now for the shields, you don't have to worry about damage or scalings at all because you're not going to be attacking with a shield. What you're going to be doing is blocking, which this part here is what you have to worry about. The most important things is going to be its physical damage negation and its stability, because a lot of things in this game, like 99% of the enemies are going to be doing physical damage or pure physical damage, and being able to block all of that is going to be really nice. So having a 100% physical block shield is really important, and stability is going to be like this next most important thing, because stability actually governs how much stamina it actually does cost when you do block something. If you block like a really large heavy weapon from a big boss, you're going to be taking a lot more stamina damage if we were just trying to like block a small little dagger of a small little enemy. But the higher the stability, the more you actually can be able to block without losing some stamina. And obviously, the more that you upgrade the shield, the more stability you actually do gain. Now, when it does come to like the elemental damage, like magic, fire, and lightning, obviously it is very like situational. It's depending on the boss. But for the most part, physical and stability are like the ones you worry about the most. And also things like weight as well, because everything does have a weight. And typically, the ones that actually weigh more will end up having a higher stability stat. Now, when it does come to the final two stats in resistance and attunement, resistance is practically useless. It just gives you a little bit of like poison resistance, and that is it. It does give you like a little bit of like more physical or more like damage negation, but like every single stat basically gives you a little bit of damage negation to the point where it's just basically useless to level up the stat. So I would just completely ignore resistance the entire time. And as for attunement, this is pretty much going to be for your spells. If you don't plan on using spells, then you can ignore attunement as well. But attunement actually does let you hold more spells. So at this instance, I have 0 attunement slots, but if I go to 10, I would have 1, which means I actually can equip 1 spell. And if I actually went to like 14, 18, and I think 24, like roughly 4 to 6 stats in attunement will actually end up giving you another slot, letting you actually hold another spell. But as for right now, we're just going to dump all into vitality because we benefit a lot of just having more health. So we're going to be doing that for now. In terms of area progression, this is the main path here. That little like ramp with those staircases leading up to that bridge, that is like the first area you got to go to. So when it does come to area progression, if you're good for now, if like I've explained everything that you wanted to, I would just honestly like recommend playing the game for yourself and going that way and trying to just get a good feel for the game. You can go down. Now down actually does lead to another section, which we actually will end up going to first, but that will end up leading to like more mid-game areas. And over here, there actually is 2 paths, even though there actually is 3 doors. The door to the right just leads to like a firebomb. Or actually, like, I think it's like 5 firebombs, which you can use those if you like are liking a projectile option. 6 firebombs, excuse me. But the middle door and the left door do lead to their own areas. Now, this middle door does lead to an elevator, but we don't actually have access to that elevator right now. We'll actually end up getting there in a bit because it wraps around to another area that ends up wrapping back around to the Firelink Shrine. We can go get there in a bit, as is that item. Now, this NPC here is the Miracle NPC. This guy actually does sell you all like your healing types of spells for your faith builds, which actually can be pretty useful to actually go spec into a little bit of faith and just to be able to use some healing spells. But as I said earlier, I'm actually going to set you guys up to have 20 ESTUS flasks, which is like more than enough when it comes to healing. But you can go ahead and join this guy's covenants to be able to gain access to like his vendor and actually be able to buy some of the spells. Now, covenants in this game are pretty much like an online use type of feature to where you actually can gain like specific types of items via doing some online activities. For the most part, it can just be completely ignored. And as for the door to the left, this actually does lead to the catacombs and like a little graveyard section, which you are going to be going there to actually gain access to 20 ESTUS flasks. The Rite of Kindling. We're not going to go there right now. There are a couple of items, but we'll be getting those in a bit. But since we are here, we actually can go grab a couple of soul packets. These items here, the Souls of the Lost Undead. Now, these items, when used, they actually do give you a bunch of souls. I think specifically the Soul of the Lost Undead is 200 souls. So if I actually were to use that item right now, I would just gain a couple hundred. We are going to be using those in a little bit. We don't really need to use them right now because actually going to be some items that we can go get later on in the game. And there's no point of actually being able to hold onto a bunch of souls and just like risking our souls, which I will tell you about the penalty of death just in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and rest up and go head down. There is this NPC here. He doesn't really give you anything, I don't think. I think he just ends up telling you what to do if you ever get lost. So you can always talk to him. Tells you like a little bit of like the lore and the story about the game as well. And now this is a Firekeeper. This is the reason why we can actually have 10 ESTUS flasks at the Firelink Shrine bonfire. There will be like a handful of Firekeepers around the game that sit next to bonfires, and those will also be kindled and have access to 10 ESTUS flasks. Now we actually can upgrade our ESTUS flask to the Firekeepers as well. We don't actually have the items, but we actually are going to go get one right now. And the item is called the Firekeeper Soul. You go return the Firekeeper Soul back to the Firekeeper, and it can upgrade the ESTUS flask. Because yes, not only can we actually hold up to 20, but we can actually upgrade them to +7. As of right now, if I were to use an ESTUS flask, I would heal for 300 HP. Our character currently has 659 HP, so it does take a couple to actually heal to max. If we were to pick up another ESTUS or Firekeeper Soul, I could get it to 400 and another one to get it to 500, I believe. And we actually will get it to +2 in this guide. I always recommend sending elevators back up when you do use them because you might end up coming back to this location. And the elevators don't reset themselves. Definitely pick up that Soul of a Nameless Soldier. I think that's like 800 souls worth. In a soul packet right there. Now this area is New Londo Ruins. Now this location is kind of more like a mid to late game area. I wouldn't recommend doing it right now, but we actually can gain access to it, so we might as well just benefits because there is a Firekeeper Soul that we can go pick up. There is Transient Curse right here. Transient Curse is an item to be able to hit ghosts, which ghosts are only in this location, so you're going to need that for this area. We're not going to use it because we're not going to be fighting anything. We're just going to be picking up the item that is right there. We can't walk there right now because, you know, it's a little cliff. If I walked off there, we would just die, but we can walk on this solid ground. We're going to walk through this first door here to the right to completely ignore the ghosts. Now that item there, just make a straight beeline to it. As you see, when I look at the ground, it actually is a very small and narrow pillar. Just pick it up, turn around, and just run backwards. If you do end up dying, don't worry, you can just run back. Don't worry, there is literally nothing to lose there. As long as you just do pick up that Firekeeper Soul, and that's fine. Item here is the ESTUS, actually a pretty cool thrusting sword. If you actually wanted to go with like a cool thrusting sword type of build, this one is going to be one of the best ones to use, and you get it right at the beginning. We're not going to be using it though. Now down here is going to be another NPC. That's actually a blacksmith. He actually can help upgrade your weapons and actually can sell some sorceries too. Now this guy is practically useless because there actually is another blacksmith in a more convenient location. He's right next to a bonfire that you can teleport to later in the game, which yes, you actually can teleport between bonfires, but that's only for the second half of the game. You cannot do that for the first half of the game. But he actually does sell some sorceries as well, but there are going to be other NPCs that do sell these exact same sorceries. The sorceries actually have their own amount of uses. Like Soul Arrow, you have 30 uses of this, and if you actually do buy multiple copies and equip both of them, you know, with a second Soul Arrow, you can actually gain 60 of that. So there is a benefit there. Now, that is the door we actually did this come through. This is the door we actually are going to be going. But to tell you guys how the death mechanic actually does work, we're just going to go ahead and roll off the cliff and die real quick. Now, basically what dying does do, obviously, it does teleport you back to the last bonfire that you did rest at. In this instance, it is going to be the Firelink Shrine. And it also does completely remove your souls and your humanity. As you see right there, we have 0 souls and 0 humanity. And unfortunately, it does remove our human form. So now we are hollowed again. So if you actually did want to go back to human form, you are going to have to pop another humanity just to be able to do that. So yeah, every single time that you do die, you just lose access to being able to summon enemies or summon NPCs or other allies. And this is why I also recommend sending the elevator back up because this is more convenient. If the elevator was back down again, we had to pull a lever. It just saves a bit of time. Now, thankfully, there actually is a way to gain our souls and humanity back that we did actually lose. Because, as you see right here, there's a little green spots. If you go back to the same location that you actually ended up dying, you can interact with this bloodstain and end up gaining the souls that we lost, which in this instance was 61 souls, and our 1 humanity is now back. Now, if you did die before actually reaching your bloodstain, the bloodstain will be gone forever, and that soul and those souls and that humanity will just be gone. So I definitely do recommend not dying as much because, yeah, very risky. But in this instance, we don't really have many souls, and you wouldn't be having your humanity right now. So there's literally nothing to lose when running through these areas. The area that we just gained access to, the Valley of the Drakes, can only be accessed via the master key. That door would otherwise be closed and have no way to open, and you have to come through this way and actually go around the backside. This area over there is actually Blightstown. Actually, it's somewhat of an early game location. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do at the beginning, kind of like more of your 4th or 5th area that you actually go through. There are some important items there, but it is extremely hard and annoying to navigate, and it doesn't really wrap back around to where we need to go. It's kind of more out of the way, so I recommend doing that a bit later into the playthrough. Now, as I say here, we have a sleeping undead dragon. Now, this dragon actually does wake up if you do walk closer to him. If you pick up that item on the right, so that means you're walking too close, but you actually can pick up this item here on the left, which is the Astoris Straight Sword. And we can pick up this item here, which is another soul packet. I think that one actually does give you a couple of thousand souls. So definitely pick that one up. The item that we did not pick up was a shield. And the shield that he does actually drop is better than the shield that we have right now. Although it is a bit heavier. And I actually am going to be picking up another shield in a couple of minutes, which I'm just going to end up using that one instead. It doesn't block as well, but actually does have a very specific benefit. Now, these enemies here are the blue drakes. Just roll to the right and just hug the right wall. And don't worry about engaging with these guys at all. You may have noticed that there actually was a cave that had a little item in there. That was just 1 humanity. You can go pick it up if you wanted to, but you probably will die because as soon as you walk into that little cave, these enemies are going to breathe lightning at you, and they do a lot of damage, and they have a lot of health because, yeah, we're not supposed to really be fighting them right now. We're going to just run straight past them. There actually were some more items along that bridge that did actually lead to a dead end. It was just an armor set and a shield. We don't really need those things. Now, you can send the elevator back down as well, but we don't really need to because we're not really going to go back there right now because we have this bonfire, another checkpoints. We'll also keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, we only gain access to the checkpoints once you do rest at it. If you light the bonfire, it does not activate the checkpoint. You have to rest there first. We don't need anything right now when it does come to leveling up because we don't have enough, and we're going to be going to grab a couple of really important items. Now, to the right of this doorway, there is going to be a Black Knight, which is actually an extremely powerful enemy. Does do a lot of damage, especially at this point in the game, and he's very challenging to try and fight. You actually can try and practice on him because, there's a checkpoint right here. You're not going to have many souls, so you can go ahead and do that, but we're just going to go run down, ignore this guy, pick up this item right here, which is the Grass Crushed Shield, which this is going to be the shield of choice. Gonna just go ahead and run past him. Can go ahead and try and parry him and hit him off the ledge. He actually has a chance of falling off the ledge himself, and if he does do that, he will die. Now, these Black Knights, they actually don't respawn, but they actually do drop some really good items, some really good upgrade materials for later in the game, and they have a chance of dropping their weapons as well. We actually are going to quit out here, because actually there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and he's chasing us. And another thing is that quitting out in this game is really good because it actually resets enemy positions. So any single time you're getting overwhelmed, before you do you can't pause the game at all. But you can just go ahead and quit out and it will reload you back in the exact same area, and all the other enemies will end up resetting back to their original position. So currently we have no enemies aggroed towards us. But yeah, that Black Knight can actually drop the Black Knight Halberd. Has a very rare chance of dropping it, and he doesn't respawn. So unfortunately you can't farm to try and get it. But the Black Knight Halberd is one of the best weapons in the entire game because it is very easy to upgrade, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. We currently are in the Darkroot Basin. There is a tower right there directly above my head. You see it's some stairs that lead to the tower. That is basically the first area in the game. So that original staircase I told you guys to go up when we were at Firelink Shrine, it would end up wrapping back around to that location. Now, the reason that I am telling you that is because I want you guys to understand that the game is not really that large. It's just really well interconnected. It is very small and dense. There's lots of these areas all is connected to each other. So it might seem very daunting to try and go through, but it's just really well connected. We definitely want to pick up that item because that is going to be a bow that we are going to be using to cut off the tail of a dragon very safely to try and get its sword. We are going to come up to a crystal lizard right now. Now, crystal lizards are enemies that don't actually attack you. They just run away and actually can teleport after a few seconds. But we actually want to kill them really quickly before that actually happens because they do drop really good upgrade materials. Now, A good way to kill them is by using a heavy attack, because the heavy attack actually does make them flip over and actually have obviously less of a chance to try and teleport around, because they can't teleport while they're like flipped over like that. But that Crystal Lizard is actually guaranteed to drop Twinkling Titanites, and it has a chance to drop either large shards or a chunk, which are really good important upgrade materials, which I will get into later. Now, we are currently now at the Darkroot Garden. Now, at this point, it does split up into two areas. There's actually a linear path to the left, and there is a linear path to the right. We are going to go to the right first, because there actually is a couple of really good items that we can pick up. Actually, there's only one item that we really need to go pick up in the Wolf Ring, which is actually right there. But we can't get there right now because it's high up, and unfortunately we have to run all the way around. So that's kind of unfortunate. Don't need to kill these guys at all. You can just go run through. You can pick up this item along the way. They're not going to be doing that much damage to you, but we have an unupgraded longsword right now, and it's just going to be pretty annoying to try and kill them. Honestly, you can do it if you want to, but it's just going to be time consuming, and we have better things to do. Now, there actually is an illusionary wall right here that leads to a bonfire. Now, we can't interact with that bonfire right now because there are enemies nearby. So any single time that you are like surrounded by enemies, you won't be able to like light up a bonfire or rest at one, so do keep that in mind. But I just wanted to show that bonfire anyway, because I just want you guys to just understand the concept of having illusionary walls. Some walls that might seem a bit suspicious, you want to hit them just in case they ends up like opening up another path. In that instance, that wall looked very suspicious. I hit it, and a bonfire appeared. You actually can go rest at that bonfire and actually kill those enemies, but we're not going to really be fighting anything outside of this tree, which is actually blocking our way, because it is pretty risk-free. If I end up dying, you can just always run back. It's not that big of a run back. There actually isn't really much in this area in particular. There actually is a boss down that way. Obviously, no need to fight it right now, especially when we can get like really good stuff to go ahead and fight all these bosses without actually having to really kill anything or have to. It doesn't really require much skill either, because, you know, as you can see right now, we're whacking on a tree. But yeah, once that tree is now gone, we can just go ahead and continue along the very narrow and linear path. There are a couple of enemies along the way, or just one weird like stingray looking enemy. You can just ignore that one. It's just one narrow path. It actually does lead up into this little forest section, which also is actually pretty linear and narrow itself. But we're just going to go take the first opening that we see to the right. When you see the staircase to the right, just go ahead and take it. Now, one thing I actually want you guys to actually practice is your jumping. Now, jumping in this game is actually tied to your sprint. You actually cannot jump from a standstill position. You can only do it while sprinting and clicking the L3 button while sprinting. If you are playing the original Dark Souls game and not the remaster, you'd have to click circle while sprinting, which is an inconvenience because your circle button is also your dodge and your sprint, so it can be a bit jank. But the reason why I want you to practice there, because there actually is an enemy right up ahead that is right next to the item that we need to get. So we're going to go ahead and pick up that item and then just jump across to the other side. Now, I think you can just roll off the cliff here. I don't think you need to jump. But just for the sake of practicing the jumping, I'm just going to line it up and just sprint and jump. But I'm pretty sure you can just roll off there. But either way, if you did die, it's not the biggest deal, because it's going to end up teleporting you back to that other bonfire next to the Black Knight. But yeah, since after jumping off, we're just going to run back to the right, and it ends up wrapping back to the same area that we were just at. Remember I said we had the left area and the right area. We went to the right, now we're going to go to the left and head to the Undead Parish, where we're going to go buy some things, talk to a merchant, and potentially level up as well. Now, as you can see, this enemy and the Undead Parish is turned around, because typically we're actually supposed to come from that side. But a lot of this playthrough that you're going to be seeing on this guide, a lot of enemies are going to be turned around because we actually went the back way. This enemy, he can actually, hit you with that lightning. That's not going to kill you. The weapon actually might be able to kill you, but if you just like hug the left wall and just run around him, perfectly fine. But yeah, once again, not going to bother fighting that dude because he's actually really powerful. Now, this area is actually the second area in the game, technically, in terms of area progression. So the enemies here are not going to be that challenging, except for the one that we just ran past. But obviously, we're at a new bonfire right now. One thing I actually want to introduce you to is like the concept of like, this bonfire not being kindled up. So if I've currently 8 ESTUS flasks. If I rested at this bonfire, it won't actually replenish back to 10 because this bonfire is not kindled. But if I actually went ahead and used, a few more, I have 4 flasks now. Now, if I rested at the bonfire, it'll take me back to 5. If I wanted to hold 10, I can actually kindle that bonfire. I don't really recommend doing that because almost all like these bonfires in like the first half of the game are very close to Firelink Shrine. So you actually could just run back to Firelink Shrine if you wanted to get your 10 flasks and save on a humanity. And for the second half of the game, you actually can gain the ability to teleport through bonfires or between bonfires. It's not really that necessary to try and kindle up a lot of different bonfires. Now, one thing we are going to be doing is buying some items off our buddy pal, Blacksmith Andre. Every single one of those soul packets that we did acquire, we're going to go ahead and use every single one of them just to gain a bunch of souls. Okay, so after all those, we have 5,600 souls. But this is Andre. This is the blacksmith that I was talking about. This is going to be like the main blacksmith that we always return to end up, buying stuff, upgrading our weapons, which I will talk about, like, modifying, upgrading, reinforcing weapons and armor. Honestly, I wouldn't really bother upgrading armor in this game. It doesn't really do much in terms of benefits. Maybe once it gets like New Game Plus and beyond, it's going to be a thing. You can repair equipment here as well, which, yes, durability is a thing in this game. Having your weapon be almost broken or at risk, or actually having it be broken, means you're doing a lot less damage, and it's just not really worth using. So definitely try to always repair your weapons. Now, the main weapon of choice that we are going to be going with does have a heavy attack that consumes a lot of durability. So one thing we actually can go by is the repair box, because the repair box does give us the ability to repair armor and weapons at the bonfire, and we don't have to go back to a blacksmith every single time. You can actually go buy the armor smith or the armor smith box and the weapon smith box too, but you're not going to really be like upgrading as much as you would be repairing. So the repair box is more important in this instance, so you can go ahead and buy that. Now, I actually did mention about going to cut off the tail of a dragon to gain our weapon. We're going to be doing that with arrows. Now, the bow and arrow that we did pick up are honestly more than enough. But just in case you actually end up missing a bunch of shots, I recommend us buying a bunch of arrows. Don't have to buy that many. I'm just going to buy 50 because they are pretty cheap. You honestly only need about 10, 20, even if you do miss a bunch of shots. But the arrows really are more than enough. Now, he does sell a bunch of different weapons as well. We have the longsword already, which is arguably just as good, if not better, than like most other weapons here. Now, Titanite shards is actually an item that can help upgrade your weapon to at least +5. But we are going to be getting a weapon that doesn't really require Titanite shards, and that weapon is honestly going to do more damage than like basically any single +5 weapon in the entire game. But at this point, with our remaining souls, we are going to be leveling up. Now, we are going to be leveling up some strength and dexterity. And the reason being is because even though I did mention that putting points into the damaging stats early on doesn't really do much, we're going to need to put up some points into them to meet the requirements for certain things. We need 14 dexterity to meet the requirements for the longbow. Now, if you were going to go into a strength build and you weren't going to worry about leveling dexterity at all, and you actually went with a starting class that didn't have much dexterity, then unfortunately you can't really use the longbow, but you can use the short bow, which I will tell you how to get that in a little bit, which only requires 12 dexterity. But at the very least, if you were going to follow this guide, you were going to need to use a bow. And honestly, I'd recommend us going to the 14 dexterity. It's only a couple points difference anyway, and the longbow just actually does a bit more damage. And we are also going to go into 15 strength because our weapon of choice is going to require 16 strength, and we'll end up getting enough souls to be able to get there. Like, we're almost right there already. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and level up those stats. Okay, now at this point, we can go ahead and progress to get our main weapon of choice. Over there is something they actually go to later in the game. That's the gate will actually open up once you do ring 2 separate bells. There's actually one bell in this location after the boss, and the other bell is all the way down in Blightstown, which is that area that I said that was next to the Valley of the Drakes. If you kill those 2 bosses and ring those bells, then you can go unlock that door, which actually is the main area progression. So that's basically how you get from area to area. Now, a couple things that I actually want to talk about first is the new items that we picked up. The Grass Crest Shield and the Wolf Ring. Now, the Grass Crest Shield is honestly not as good as the Heater Shield when it does come to blocking. As you can see, this is only 95% physical damage reduction and 51 stability, and the Heater Shield just gets more, and it actually weighs less too. But the Grass Crest Shield actually does give me the boost of faster stamina recovery speed. And stamina recovery speed, or stamina recovery in this game, is extremely important to just have it be faster, because it literally means that you just have more opportunities to attack, more opportunities to dodge, or just be able to block more, and that just could mean more damage and is better survivability. The stamina recovery speed is basically how fast the green bar can actually recover. If you were like very reliant on like blocking in this game, then I would just go ahead and use the Heater Shield instead. But we literally gain the effects of the Grass Crest Shield as long as you just have it equipped. Even if you two-hand our main weapon, we still gain the effect, which is, as you can tell, without the green aura glow that we have going on. Now, the other item we picked up is the Wolf Ring, which actually this does give us plus 40 to our poise stat, which I haven't really talked about much when it comes to poise. As you can see, the stat right here, 40 poise. This basically lets us tank attacks without getting staggered. If I'll just show you real quick, if he goes ahead and hits me, as you can tell, I got staggered by that attack. But if I had and put on the ring, yeah, as you can tell, I didn't get staggered at all. So it's extremely important in this game. The Wolf Ring is literally probably the most important and probably the best item that you actually can get for honestly any single build, especially if you are a beginner. Probably not except for like spells though, because if you are just grouped up against a whole bunch of trash mobs, if one of them just hits you once, it's basically just a GG. You can just get stun locked in this game, and it's just not that good. We are going to go ahead and kill these enemies because we can. This is only like a really like low leveled area. It's pretty much just as like high leveled as the tutorial area, honestly. Like these guys, they're just dying in like one backstab. But as you saw right there, I literally just like poised the attack, didn't really get staggered, walked right behind him and got a backstab. Now we are going to go back to Firelink Shrine at this point. So actually is another enemy here that we can go ahead and try and kill. We're going to get our weapon of choice in a little bit, which does like 3 times as much damage as this thing. So I don't really recommend killing this guy right now. But he can like drop a Titanite shard. And if you're just, for the sake of practicing, I had the weapon equipped and the shield equipped. For the sake of practicing the combat, you can go ahead and fight him. Just strafe attacks, block accordingly, dodge accordingly. Always look out for your stamina bar. Make sure you just don't really go to 0. Just be very wary of that one. You can strafe a lot of attacks in this game, especially like those downward overhead slams. One thing you may have noticed that I just did this there is the enemy did actually get staggered slightly. Which enemies in this game have like a certain amount of like poise, so they actually can get staggered themselves. With smaller weapons, it's going to take a lot of hits to be able to stagger them. So with like a straight sword, it might take about like 10 or so hits to stagger. But if I had like an ultra great sword, it'd probably stagger in like every single hit. Just to show you the difference or damage difference between one-handed and two-handed, you're doing like a decent amount more damage if you just have it two-handed. You might end up doing a bit more poise damage as well. But he drops a Titanite shard every single time, which is like an upgrade material. He has a chance of dropping a weapon too. You can go ahead and practice fighting that guy, or practice the combat by fighting that guy if you wanted to. But you definitely want to pick up that item, even if you were going to avoid him, because that is a Firekeeper's Soul, another one. So we actually can get to +2 flasks before even fighting our first boss. Honestly, even before fighting any enemy, we could have just ran straight past those guys, which running past enemies in this game is honestly extremely broken. Like, you literally don't have to fight anything. You obviously still benefits because you get more souls, and I recommend just fighting the enemies, especially for your first playthrough. But at any point, even if you died and you don't want to have to like kill the enemies to run back to where you need to be, running through the area is honestly just really good. Like, you literally can just do that. Now we're back at Firelink Shrine. This is the elevator that I was talking about. We did all that running, and it wrapped all the way back around. So yeah, the interconnected level design in this game is extremely good. Another soul packet right here. But yeah, the main benefits of coming back here, well, actually, there's a couple benefits. One, we actually can go get our 10 flasks again. So now we're at rest. We're going to have the 10 flasks back. And we have a couple of Firekeeper souls. So now we can go get a +2 ESTUS flask. So instead of healing for 300 HP, we're going to be healing for almost 500, actually over 500 HP, which is almost our entire health bar at this point. Don't consume the Firekeeper souls. You have to use them at the Firekeeper. But now we can go ahead and run back to the Undead Parish, which is through this middle door and up the elevator. You don't have to worry about sending the elevator up or down because this one is actually a double elevator. So like when you go take one up, the other one actually ends up going down. Now, what I mentioned earlier was that when you do rest at a bonfire, it actually does respawn all the enemies. Now, some actually don't respawn. Big Black Knights does not respawn, and the other Black Knights that you will see, that we end up seeing earlier, the Black Knight that had the Black Knight Halberd, they don't respawn either. Just gonna go ahead and kill these guys real quick. We literally have the Wolf Ring. We have, like, we can just go ahead and poise everything and just spam our weapons. Now, one thing when it does come to the shielded enemies, when you actually swing and hits with your light attack, your weapon will actually end up bouncing off. But if you have the weapon two-handed, the weapon does not bounce off the shield. Actually, it depends on the shield, but for most like smaller shields, the weapon will not bounce off. So if you're fighting shielded enemies and noticing that it's pretty obnoxious, just go ahead and two-hand. We are going to be going this way to wrap back around. We could have run straight through like the middle of like the cathedral, but there are a lot of like annoying enemies there, and it's just too risky for no reason. And actually, I can introduce a different mechanic that we haven't really talked about, and that's just like slow walking. Enemies don't aggro as much if you slow walk, so it actually is like some amounts of stealth in this game, and we can go ahead and try and backstab this guy by slowly walking behind him, get behind, and just go ahead and get the backstab. Now, when enemies are on the ground, they're actually invulnerable. They actually get a little bit of iframes, similar to us when we get knocked to the ground. But this guy, we can just go ahead and fight him like most of the guys. Just hold up your shield. When he attacks, then his weapon will bounce off and we can go hit him with like an attack. I recommend doing a heavy attack after blocking because it covers a nice amount of range. And obviously we're in a tight corridor, so it benefits. Now these spear guys, they shield a whole bunch. You actually can counter them with a kick. If you flick up on the D or flick up with your joystick and attack at the same time, it does kick and it breaks the shield every single time. Or you can just wait for him to attack and the weapon will bounce off the wall or bounce off by a shield, and we can go ahead and heavy attack, and it works that way. But yeah, you can also kick as well, which kicking is somewhat inconsistent, and it might not be the easiest thing to pull off. So the blocking strat just works every single time. But if you don't have a shield, you know you can just always kick. Now, I recommend sticking to the left here when walking around, because if you walk too close to the middle, it actually does aggro one of the enemies over there. But there's like 3 enemies in that room, so that's why I didn't recommend running straight through the middle. But just to show you guys, if you did end up aggroing one of them, you can either just strafe behind him. Pretty much all poking attacks, you can just strafe, and you just get a free backstab every time. And when they're standing up, you go ahead to use your heavy attack. Obviously, if you use the heavy attack too early there, while they're standing up, they're not going to take any damage because they'll have some iframes. So keep that in mind. But that item there is the halberd, which the halberd is literally one of the best weapons in the game. Like, it's a really good weapon class. We'll end up finding like about 5 weapons in this game that are arguably top 10. And the halberd can be one of them. It is outclassed by another option, but you can use the halberd from start to finish and have a pretty smooth experience. But we'll actually go into like the weapons later on in the game. I did not mean to do that. But that actually can lead into what I'm about to say. As you can tell, all the enemies are faced in the other direction because we're actually supposed to come from that side. And we actually are going to run all the way to the other side over there, past this metal ball. Now, typically, when you run past this section, this guy actually aggroes and runs and pulls the lever, and it closes the gate. We are going to have to run back here, and for convenience sake, I would like to kill this guy first, because he actually won't pull the lever. So when you come back, the door is actually still opened. You actually still can run through and around, even if this gate is closed. So there is that through this little staircase right here. But we're just going to go run past. Just hug the left side, run past this metal ball. The metal ball shouldn't actually attack you. It shouldn't actually hit you if you're just sprinting. Even if it does, you're not going to die. That was actually really close. But we're going to go run up this little staircase. We're just going to run halfway up this staircase. We're not going to run all the way up because there actually is a black knight up there. And that is just not worth it because, yeah, they're really powerful. But we're just going to stay up halfway up the staircase, and we're going to pick up these enemies one at a time. Only a couple should actually spawn in here. But same strats, just block, have the weapon deflect off. Actually, 3 walked in here. But same strats. They're like in a tight corridor. You just block the attacks, use a heavy attack when the weapon just deflects off. Honestly, you could just 2-hand and spam light attack. It would have done the exact same thing. Now, we actually want to go to this other side of this gate here. Obviously, it's blocked off. Normally, there would be a lever on that side, and we'll pull it. But we actually can still gain access to that section by going down this little ladder. Now, there actually is a bunch of rats down here, and they actually can proc poison on you. I recommend just like spamming as soon as you get there. I recommend having the weapon 2-handed. Jeez. Okay. Good thing that happened. So now you know what not to do. So before you go down there, just have the weapon 2-handed and just spam. Like, they can actually stagger you if a bunch of them hit you at once. But with the wolf ring, for the most part, you're going to be perfectly fine. They do poison you in a couple of hits, but as you can tell, the poison is not doing much damage. And we're going to be going up to our bonfire pretty soon. And when resting at the bonfire, we can remove the poison status effect, which I haven't really talked about status effects much. But I could talk about that a bit later. Now, one thing I recommend is what I mentioned earlier when I was in the tutorial section, is that I would get used to not locking on. And that's for instances like this, because if you actually did plan to dodge that enemy, and if you're locked on, there's a good chance you end up rolling up the ledge. So you don't want to do that. But we're just going to be using the shield poking strats. Use a follow-up heavy attack there. He actually dropped the longsword, but we already have the longsword, so we don't need to worry about that. We're just going to run to the other side of this under bridge, and we're going to take the door right here, and we're going to kick this ladder down. Now, this is actually the first area in the game. This area is the undead BURG. Oh, I recommend staying at full health and worrying about your health if you're poisoned. But yeah, fall damage is not that bad in this game. It actually is pretty forgiving. You can jump off there and not take much damage. We are going to rest so we can actually go ahead and stop that poisoning effect. And also, there's a couple things that we must do as well. On top of the bridge is actually going to be where the dragon spawns, and that's where we're going to be actually hitting its tail pretty safely. We don't have the dragon unlocked, so to speak, because we have to see the dragon first for him to spawn on the bridge. And to see the dragon, we actually have to go run through the first area. But now we're actually at the first area, but we just run around the back way. So we're going to go ahead and see the dragon now, which is just going to be there on that little bridge. He's going to spawn in. He's not going to like damage us or attack us at all. He's just going to fly away. We just have to see him first. But first things first, I want to tell you guys about a merchant. These are more of those like shield hollows. I recommend just kicking them. But I was basically going to say that 2-handed weapon is going to make the weapon just not deflect off. Now here is actually a merchant. Now this merchant is where you can go buy the short bow. So if you actually were going to go with a strength build and you weren't going to level up much dexterity, and you only wanted to go to like 12 instead of 14 for whatever reason, it's not really that big of a difference. You can go buy the short bow off this guy, and you can buy some more arrows as well. We're going to come back to this guy later as we actually do end up progressing through this section. So don't worry, I'm not going to go skip any areas. We're actually going to go progress these areas one after the other. after we go get everything that we need to go get. But we have to go interact with the dragon first. So we have to go down these stairs, and the dragon should spawn in now. He doesn't damage you, he just like staggers you a little bit. But now he's going to go fly off to the bridge, which we actually can go there right now. So we can just go to the bridge where he's going to be, and we're just going to go whack at his tail with a bunch of arrows. And it's not going to take that long because we have the longbow and the feather arrows that we picked up off the body in the Darkroot basin. So we're going to go to this bridge. I probably should not have done that. That was a mistake. What you're supposed to do instead is go up the stairs and then just go head straight down. That's what you should have done instead. So go up the stairs, bait out the dragon, and run back down. But unironically, this part of the game is actually a really good farming method because, as you can tell, the dragon breathes fire on the bridge and it kills all the enemies on the bridge. And every single time it gives you 500 souls. So what you can do, go down to the bonfire, rest, climb back up, go to the top of the bridge, and then every single time that's 500 souls. And it's going to be like about 30 seconds every single time. So if you really wanted to just get a bunch more health, you could go ahead and do that, or buy some more Titanite shards to level up your weapon. That could be an option too. But what we're going to be doing is hitting the tail with a bunch of arrows from this position. I will go ahead and kill this guy first, so he doesn't interfere. I don't think he will anyway. But we are going to have to go equip our bow, which is the longbow. And we're going to go equip our arrows, the feather arrows and the standard arrows. We only need like 15 feather arrows, probably even 14 feather arrows. We don't actually need that many. But we bought the standard arrows just in case we ended up missing. Now, to use a bow, we have to have it two-handed, which you can have it two-handed by clicking the light attack or clicking triangle. And we're going to aim it by clicking L1 or LB. And you can use the up on the D-pad to zoom in and down on the D-pad to zoom out. I recommend having the standard arrows equipped by clicking R2 or RT. Equip those first so you can actually have a good understanding as to like how the actual mechanic works and how to use a bow, and so you can time it correctly. But basically, you want to hit the tail as it actually ends up getting to that point. So I'm just going to have our feather arrows equipped. You can actually hold onto the light attack button and it will just like help prepare the arrow. And then when you see it, just aim it correctly, time it, and you end up hitting the tail that way. And I actually am going to hit the tail twice every single time. So he's going to go back into position, wait for the tail. And it's just like a rinse and repeat type of situation. So like as soon as you see his tail move back to the position, just time it correctly. His tail will end up going right directly in front of our faces if we just line it up here. And when you see him just go back again, just keep hitting him. So you can hit him twice every single time. I won't take that many arrows to actually kill him, especially if you have the longbow. And there you go. We have the Drake sword. It only took, what, 14 arrows? Probably less than that, actually. Now we can just go ahead and remove the longbow because that's just unnecessary weight. We're not going to be using that anymore. And now we can actually go back to the bonfire. First things first, I'm actually going to go ahead and equip it so I can tell you guys exactly what's going on. Now, the Drake sword is actually another straight sword. It actually is a bit slower than our regular straight sword, but as you can tell, it gets a lot more damage. We don't have the requirements right now, so it's not going to seem as such. Damage of the long sword is only 80, and the base damage of the Drake sword is 200. So yeah, we're doing like well over twice as much damage just with the Drake sword alone. Now the thing is with the Drake sword, it doesn't have any requirements at all. So going into your damaging stats, you literally gain no benefits whatsoever. So at higher levels, the Drake sword is not going to be as good, especially because it actually does require dragon scales to upgrade, which I can talk about upgrade paths a bit later. Now, one thing you may notice is that I don't have the requirements right now. I only have 15 strength. I need 16 strength. Yeah. It is a very long and slow, sluggish type of moveset, and it'll be doing basically next to no damage as well. Now, one thing you actually can do in this game is specifically for strength, when you have a weapon two-handed, it gives you 50% into that stat, like a virtual 50% into that stat. So it would end up giving me like 22 strength if I were a two-handed weapon. So if I had 22 strength, I basically meet the requirement. So now you see there's no like red X next to the icon of the weapon, so I can go freely swing the weapon now if I just had it two-handed. That's something that you can only do for strength. So if something has a really high strength requirement, potentially you don't really have to spec into that particular requirement, and you can go like a little bit less in this two-handed weapon. But for in this instance, we actually want to use the weapon one-handed, so we actually can benefit of blocking with the shield. So it's going to put that 1 point into strength just to meet the requirements. We're going to spec into like, some health and some endurance as well, because, why not? Those stats are very important. Now, at this point, we're actually going to have to run back all the way to the undead parish. So we can go get a ring, we'll go back to Firelink Shrine, and then go ahead and try and get up to 20 flasks. And we're basically going to be set for the entire run, because this weapon can very easily carry for the first third of the game. Actually, I'll fat rolling right now because, you can tell because I was sprinting a lot slower. and it's not fat rolling, medium rolling. So we're going to have to take off the gloves just so we can actually be able to gain that access to the light roll again, which means we're going to be taking a bit more damage, but it's perfectly fine. I'd rather be able to light roll just so we actually can, have better survivability while dodging. And we have the wolf ring anyway for this more poise, so it's not that big of a deal. But now to get back to the undead parish, we actually can go run through back up the stairs or up the ladder again via the rats, but we actually can just go this way. It actually gives us access to the bonfire too. We're just going to go run up the bridge and hide behind this little wall right here. That way the fire doesn't actually hit us. Now to actually bait the dragon down so we actually can run past, we're just going to have to stand here. Because if I try to run right now, the dragon's going to breathe fire and we're probably just going to die. We probably end up dying because he's going to knock us to the ground and then probably just stun lock us. But basically just prepare yourself for him to come back down. Oh, we actually can survive there. Wow. If I was faster, I probably wouldn't have gotten hit. But actually is a chance to get hit there as he did if he just jumps up and breathes fire directly below. But basically what you want to do is just run to the right. Don't actually light up the bonfire because you actually can breathe fire in this direction as well. But now we can go ahead and probably not just rest just yet, because being that the dragon, cleared off the bridge for us, we might as well go ahead and pick up these items, which is another soul packet and the claymore, which is another weapon that's arguably like a top 10 weapon in this game. It's really good, as we will get into later. Now, the dragon did actually run away and despawn, but you actually can spawn him in again if you just run through across the bridge. So if you actually did want to continuously farm souls on the bridge, you can still do that. But now we're at the other side of this gate, and now we have access to this bonfire, and now we can go run back to the undead parish. Now, before that, we actually can go ahead and kill the Black Knight that's on top of these stairs, because as I mentioned, there's a Black Knight at the top, and it's just not worth fighting him with only a longsword because, we're not going to do much damage, and we're not going to really be running back through this area anyway, so might as well just go kill him now, even though he might be a bit challenging, because this guy does a lot of damage as an ultra great sword, but a lot of attacks, once again, you can just strafe to the right. Just try and block, strafe to the right. He'll end up doing a lot of stamina damage to your shield, but a lot of attacks you can go ahead. I could have just backstabbed him right there. But one thing you can do as well against this guy is parry. I recommend just picking like one random trash mob and just like parry. Just do for parry practice. Do the other attack. That's easier to parry. Parry that one. It's fine. It worked out. But yeah, he dies on like 1 backstab and 1 riposte. So yeah. Not the worst thing. And actually got his weapon, which is actually a pretty rare drop. And this guy actually does not respawn. So yeah. The Black Knight Greatsword is probably the worst of the 4 Black Knight weapons. If you end up getting the Black Knight Sword or the Black Knight Halberd, I would honestly recommend going into those weapons, because the good thing about the Black Knight weapons is that they're really easy to upgrade, as we'll talk about later. But that guy is always guaranteed to drop a Titanite chunk, which Titanite chunks are useful to upgrade between plus 10 to plus 15. So they're kind of for like later in the game. But being that we're not going to really come back here anyway, we might as well just kill him now. Now, at this point, you actually can go run straight through the gates, but just for the sake of telling you guys how to progress past this section, if you had the gates closed, we're just going to go ahead and let this guy close the gate, which I don't know where he actually is at. I don't know. He's not closing the gate, but normally the guy would close the gate. Not sure what's going on there. So against his shielded enemies, let's go ahead and two-hand the weapon. We're going to ahead and tank all the attacks. We're going to one-shot basically every single one of these trash mobs with the Drake Sword. We're doing that much damage. That boar is stuck on the wall as well. Okay, nothing is really working out the way I thought it was going to work out. Because one thing we just picked up is alluring skulls. And alluring skulls are like items that you can go ahead and throw, and it attracts enemies towards that location. And one thing we could have done is thrown an alluring skull at this fire, and then the metal boar can go stand into the fire and die. And if we're directly above him, we can go ahead and get a plunging attack on top of him, and he probably just end up dying. But he's like stuck. So anyway, none of our concern. Now we can just go run through this gate. I don't know what happens and what happens to that guy. He probably just end up dying somewhere. But just to show you guys how to progress this next section, we're just going to go underneath. I can't hit anything to save my life. I suck so much. Everything is so fine. Everything is so fine. Maybe I need to lock on myself. Maybe I need to lock on, or to have the weapon one-handed. There's an item down there that is just a key to unlock an NPC in a jail cell. But we already have the master key, which actually unlocks that jail cell already. So that's not a big deal at all. There is a soul packets right here, which you can go pick up. Another couple hundred souls. It is a pretty small little section. If that gate does close, there's only a couple items here. A shield, which you're going to go get in a little bit. One thing I actually did not talk about is the movesets of the Drake Sword. It is like the regular straight sword moveset, just like a little bit slower. One-handed heavy attack, unfortunately, is not a poke. So unfortunately, we just lose access to the poking heavy attack, which can be kind of unfortunate. So if you were fighting in tight corridors, you would have to go ahead and have it two-handed. But one thing it actually does have access to is a unique heavy attack. A two-handed heavy attack specifically, it actually does shoot out a projectile. And this projectile does basically just as much damage as your light attack, but just in a distance. So it can like one-shot basically every trash mob if there's like a lot of them lined up perfectly, which actually will be a couple of instances where that does happen in this guide itself. But one thing that the shield, the weapon actually does do, the heavy attack, is actually consumes a lot of stability, a lot of durability, excuse me. So you're going to have to constantly repair this weapon every single time you get to a bonfire. Just get into the habit of it, because it does consume 30 durability for every single heavy attack, and it does have 360 durability. So once you use it about 10 or so times, the weapon's going to be at risk and you're going to be doing a lot less damage. So I would recommend, any single time you get to a bonfire, just go ahead and repair it, which does cost a little bit of souls, but it's definitely worth it. But yeah, now we were back here again. We could have just ran here through the gates, but we went through like the underside because, you know, just in case you guys missed out on the gate, I can tell you how to do that. Now at this point, we could have gone ahead and killed that Black Knight that was here. We would probably end up killing him like 3 or 4 shots, would have been a lot easier. If that was the case, if you haven't killed him yet and you were to plan to fight him right now, I'd recommend resting at a bonfire first, probably the one down there in the Undead Parish, or probably the one here in Firelink Shrine, which is going to give you your 10 flasks back. Now, we're not going to be doing that right now. I recommend doing that because if you do die, it actually teleports you back to the other bonfire next to the bridge. But for convenience sake of this video and just saving some time, we're going to go progress forth this way. But yeah, I recommend just going to hit up the Firelink Shrine bonfire and then come back here, go up these stairs, because we're going to go unlock another NPC, go ahead and grab his ring. Now this section I recommend is baiting out these trash mobs, and this is where we can use the heavy attack, because a lot of them are lined up perfectly. We use the heavy attack and they can just all die. Very satisfying, because these guys, even though like they're all going to die in one hit, this other channeler, as you just saw, we ended up dying. Well, that was definitely interesting. Well, I made my way back, obviously cut that part out in the video, running backwards. I recommend staying a bit further back because he sniped me through the window. And combined with the buffed up hollows actually doing a lot of damage, not really the best thing in the world. So yeah, stay a bit further back, make sure they're all dead. But he does this like funky dance and then it buffs them to make them do more damage. And yeah, they hurt. So yeah. But thankfully, this guy doesn't respawn when you kill him. So next time you run through this section, which you actually have to because the boss is actually further down this way, you don't got to deal with that no more. You actually can go ahead and kill the boss right now if you wanted to, but for convenience sake and actually going through the areas one after the other, we're not going to go ahead and kill the second boss right now. But he is pretty easy, especially with the Drake Sword, but we're just going to go speak to the NPC. I should have healed up and not been so risky. This guy can actually power you, by the way, and he can actually get a repose and it can probably one-shot you. So if he goes like to a particular stance, he can actually power your attack. We're going to go through this broken door. Well, that is now a broken door. And we're going to go speak to this NPC. It's going to open up the door with the master key. We're going to free him, just exhaust his dialogue, and he'll teleport back to the Firelink Shrine. And we're going to be killing him there as well, because trying to kill him right now, not going to be the best thing because it does a lot of damage. But next to Firelink Shrine, he's going to be beside a cliff, and we can just kick him off the cliff. And in that little barrel was humanity. Always recommend us rolling through like boxes or barrels and stuff, because you never know if an item might spawn in there. But yeah, now we're just going to go ahead and run back to Firelink Shrine. One thing actually you may have noticed is I actually have gained another humanity because I killed a bunch of enemies in one location, and it just gave me like a second humanity, which is pretty cool. Okay, now we're back at Firelink Shrine. We're going to go rest, get all my ESTUS flasks back. I recommend doing that before actually going ahead to try and free that NPC, because yeah, it can be a bit challenging sometimes. And as you can tell, myself, with my hundreds of hours, over 1,000 hours, I still ended up dying. Now, this guy, we're going to kill him for multiple reasons. One, he actually kills the Firekeeper if you leave him alive, which is not good, because if he kills the Firekeeper, it actually removes access to the bonfire, and the bonfire actually goes away, and you won't actually be able to get access to it again until halfway through the playthrough, which is not good, because that bonfire is extremely important. And most importantly, this guy gives us a really good ring. Now, to kill him, I would recommend taking off the weapon, because if you're going to kick, it involves having to flick up and click light attack at the same time. But if you miss the flick and you click light attack, it's going to hit him. And if you hit him and do enough damage, he's going to aggro. And this guy does a lot of damage towards us, and he has a lot of health. And I just don't recommend it. So you just got to kick him twice. So kick him once. I know I actually messed up. So normally it's just twice, but it messed up. He got caught in something here. But yeah, just kick him off the ledge. When he dies, just quit out the game and just reload. And upon reloading, he should have the 5 humanity on the ground, and the Ring of Favor and Protection. Now, the 5 humanity, obviously really good, but yeah, the Ring of Favor Protection is going to be a ring that we leave on for the entire game, because upon removing it, it actually does break. But we don't want to remove it anyway, because the ring does give us 20% more health, 20% more stamina, and 20% more equipment load, which at this level right now, we're not going to really benefit much, because 20% of not much is not going to be much. But at higher levels of vitality and endurance, we're going to benefit a lot more, which at this point we actually can go level up vitality. I'm going to level up attunement, because I actually am going to plan to use a spell alongside with this build, but I recommend just leveling up vitality if you didn't really care to use spells. But I just wanted to showcase exactly how some of the spells do work. But yeah, now at this point, we are pretty good. We have like a really high damaging weapon that can carry us for like at least a third of the game. We have the Wolf Ring, we have the Ring of Favor Protection, the Grass Crush Shield, have a decent level of health. You guys know what to level up, but we can get even more powerful. We have only 10 ESTUS flasks, which is more than enough, but we can get 20 to be really broken. So what we're going to be doing is going through the graveyard section. Actually, there's a couple ways to get there. We actually can go through the elevator section, because just beneath the elevator actually is like a little platform with like a little hole area there with some items. So we can go ahead and pick those up. Just fall down this little elevator hole. You're not going to die, don't worry. And through here is going to be a few chests with some items, some of which are useless, but some are pretty reliable, like this cracked red eye orb, which is just for like PvP invasions, kind of useless for the most part. There's a Morning Star and a Talisman. Talisman is used to actually cast miracles in this game, but 6 Homeward Bones. Homeward Bones are really, really good, because Homeward Bones let us teleport back to a bonfire without having to lose any souls. Because yes, you can actually gain access to teleporting back to the recent checkpoint without just having to die. You can do it by using a dark sign, which the game does give you, and you can use this as many times as you want to. But when you do use it, it actually makes you lose all your humanity and all your souls, and there is no way to actually get those back at all. But you can just go ahead and use a Homeward Bone, and if you do use a Homeward Bone, it'll teleport you back, and actually you still keep your humanity and actually still leave your souls intact. But now we're back in this graveyard section. It is wrapped back around there. Those are the stairs that were up last time. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pick up some items. I recommend obviously leveling up beforehand, and because we're just going to go run through. You can go ahead and kill the skeletons if you wanted, but I don't really care to. There's a soul packet there. There is this shield, which is just worse than the shield that we already have, but it does get some decent blocking to magic damage, and there actually is like a magic damaging boss that you probably can just go ahead and block the entire time. So you could use that shield for that particular boss. There is the Wing Spear, which is okay, but might be outclassed by the Halberd, and there is the Zweihander, which is like one of the best weapons in the entire game. I think it's like the second best weapon in the entire game. The best one being the Great Scythe, which we literally can go get in this next section. Now, to get to the next area, we're going to have to go down these stairs. There's actually going to be 2 sets of stairs to the left side of this little cliff. This is the second one. So skip the first one, go to the second one so you can gain access to the catacombs, which this area might be... It is like a really big and large, complicated area, but there's actually a way to like skip it to get right down to the bottom just to kill the boss, because we want to be able to kill the boss, because that boss will give us access to the Rite of Kindling, which lets us hold 20 flasks. And then we can just go ahead and use our Homeward Bone to teleport all the way back up. There actually is a bonfire here. We can go teleport to that one. Now, this enemy right here is a Necromancer. Now, the skeletons that I just ran past, if I killed those ones, they would actually respawn and infinitely respawn every single time that you kill them. But there is actually multiple ways that you can actually kill them. One is by using particular weapons that have a certain status effect, and the other way is by killing the Necromancers. That Necromancer did not respawn, because now I can go ahead and kill the skeletons. But we're going to push this level, so we actually can go open up the door that was like directly in front of those skeletons, and just go progress to the actual catacombs themselves. We are going to be getting the Great Scythe, which I consider the best weapon in the entire game, which actually is in this location. If you did not care to use the Great Scythe and you had like another weapon in mind, we can go ahead and like skip all of that, which we're going to do that right now and go straight to the boss. Recommend us crossing like this little bridge right here, baiting off these like little skeletons off the ledge, because they can be a pain in the ass. These ones actually won't. These actually will infinitely respawn. He just parried me. That's crazy. But yeah, if you see them in that stance, they're going to parry you. I knew that, and I still did it anyway, and he just jumped off the ledge. Anyway, but the Necromancer in this room just right there, you can go kill him if you want those skeletons to die. But we can go skip this entire section just by falling down right here. You'll not die. I'll probably wait for that skull to go back a little bit, but roll down. Once you land, just kind of keep rolling down this way, because those little skulls can actually explode. They probably wouldn't kill you at that amount of health, but I recommend healing up again so you can go fall down. and fall down again here. Now, you actually can go ahead and summon an NPC over here if you were in human form. I probably should have done that first. You can go ahead, there'll be a summon sign, Paladin Leroy. That guy can actually make this boss fight a lot easier, but this boss fight is arguably like the easiest in the entire game. Now, typically, to go through this section, it's probably recommended to be about halfway through the game, so the boss can actually hit pretty hard, but he doesn't really have much health. And we have the Drake Sword, so we're going to be perfectly fine. But we're going to fall down again. The boss is just in that cave right there. There's items around this whole section, but I don't recommend trying to pick them up because these enemies hit really hard. Like these bone wheel skeletons right here. These guys can stun lock you and kill you super quickly. So I recommend just like rolling straight past them and just keep sprinting. Try and zigzag your way through just in case they end up trying to hit you. Because if one of them does like target you and lock on and it hits you, it's pretty much a wrap. Like they're just that powerful. But yeah, we can basically skip that entire catacomb section just by falling down twice and getting straight down to the boss. If you did summon the NPC, just run to the boss, who will end up following you. You don't have to wait for him. And you can go ahead and use that NPC to like just gain aggro for the boss, and you can go ahead and just wail on him. Now, the boss does have like one attack that you got to watch out for, and that's like the fireball attack. That one right there, because yeah, it does a lot of damage, and if like he does summon like these phantoms, and if 3 of them go ahead and hit you, it's pretty much a wrap. So as soon as you see that attack, I'd recommend just trying to dodge out the way. But for the most part, these like phantoms are going to go away one hit. Yeah, the main guy does not have much health. You can just go ahead and wail on him the entire time, and he dies pretty quickly. Pretty quickly. And this guy gives us a bunch of souls, gives us the ability to get to 20 ESTUS flasks, and he does drop a helmet. Now, he can drop one of 3 different helmets, either the Mask of the Father, which you just got, Mask of the Child, or the Mask of the Mother. Now, the Mask of the Father, it actually does give us a boost to our equipment load, so we actually get a bit more equipment load. The Mask of the Mother gives us more HP, and the Mask of the Child gives us more stamina recovery speed, very much like the Grass Crest Shield, and those things can stack. So any single mask that you do pick up, I recommend just equipping it. But now at this point, we can go ahead and use a Homeward Bone back. Now, we actually are going to go grab the Great Scythe right now. Now, you can actually go pick up the Great Scythe and go to the boss in one fell swoop, but I just wanted to go straight to the boss just to tell you guys, if you didn't really care about getting the Great Scythe, you could just go do it that way. But now I'm going to tell you guys how to go get the Great Scythe and just go straight to the boss from there, which is not too much longer. It's just going to involve like a little bit of running and like pulling a lever. I would honestly recommend leveling up first if you were going to do it this way, because you might end up dying. But we're going to go ahead, just follow the main path. There is like some like branching sections and stuff, but it just like leads us into other rooms. So there's only like just one main path. Like in this instance here, I should be healing. There's just like a one little room with one item. I'm going to go ahead and heal now. Always pick a safe spot to heal. I should not be walking around with this many souls. I should have leveled up first, especially for this section. But as soon as you see this like guy with a bow and arrow, I would just take a right. Because past that guy with the bow and arrow ends up like wrapping back around to that main section that we were just at. But we're going to have to go turn right and go pull this lever here. Because as you notice, that bridge that was directly in front of me had a bunch of spikes on it. And we can't walk across that. So we're going to have to pull the lever. It ends up turning the bridge. So now we can go walk across it. I'm going to go ahead and heal again here. We're going to go ahead and roll off the ledge right here. So I'm not going to go walk past the bridge. Just before the bridge, just roll off the ledge. You can actually walk off the ledge. Pretty simple stuff. And we're going to do that basically one more time. Just further down there actually is a bonfire and an NPC. But we're not going to bother speaking to him because he has nothing that we need. But that particular NPC, Patches, is going to go ahead and rotate this bridge for us. Okay, one thing I just noticed is that we killed the boss first. And Patches actually teleports to another location. So we're going to go ahead and turn the bridge ourselves. Normally, an NPC would be standing right here and he would pull the platform for us. And once you actually cross the bridge, he actually turns it and we end up fall off and dying. Before you go kill the boss, I recommend doing this if you wanted to get the Great Scythe, and the NPC would be here instead. And I would just go walk halfway. I'm trying to be a bit quick and just like roll off here. That's all you got to do. Because if you take too long, he's actually going to turn the bridge and you end up rolling off and dying. Because he's he's a prankster. That's what he'd be doing. And then weapons right here, the Great Scythe. That is basically the item and how to get it. And you can go ahead and fall down this little section here. When you go stand on this little platform, it'll collapse. And it takes us directly where we were last time. So now if you go ahead and fall down one more time, it takes us to where the boss is. So when I fall down the bridge, or fell down the bridge the first time to get straight to the boss, it ended up taking us here. And this is where the NPC would actually have a summon sign. So if you wanted to get the Great Scythe and actually go kill the boss in one fell swoop, that's how you do it. Now, before running up to Firelink Shrine, I definitely recommend leveling up. At this point, we're just going to go dump into Vitality and some Endurance. And now we can go run to Firelink, which it is just like one path. I can tell you guys exactly how to get there, but as soon as you walk out, you just turn right. You can't really mess it up. There's like no other branching paths. Turn right again, and there'll be another ladder that takes you all the way to the top, and you just continue just running straight. There'll be like some like skeletons in the way blocking the path, which can be kind of annoying. You might just have to kill those, like this one right here mainly. That's basically the only threat. Okay, we made it back to Firelink Shrine. Now, a couple things that we can go do. The first thing that I recommend doing is using a couple of humanities. You need at least 3 humanities. I already have 2, so I'm just going to use another humanity just to get to 3, because we need 1 to reverse our hollowing, and we need a couple more to kindle the bonfire to 20 flasks, 1 to 15 and another to 20. Now at this point we're basically like done, really. Like now we're going to go ahead and progress to like the first area and the second area, but like all the preparation that we needed to actually get overpowered or just set ourselves up nicely, we basically already have. But we can go ahead and just progress to the first area. I can tell you guys how to do that and just tell you about some more mechanics. And actually, there's like another couple items that we can go get, a couple of NPC merchants that we can unlock, like the sorcery NPC and the pyromancy NPC, and the large ember to get us access to upgrade to get to a +10 weapon. But yeah, this is basically the main progression to get to the first area. But now we have the Drake Sword, we have the Ring of Favor and Protection, the Grass Crest Shield, 20 ESTUS flasks. We are so fine right now. Like this whole like first section of the game, the first like 3 to 4 areas are going to be a complete cakewalk at this point, and you're going to be set up with like some of the best weapons. We pretty much have like at least 4 or 5 of like the top 10 weapons in the game at this point, and you can use any single one of those that you'd like. 2-handed weapon for close, tight corridors. Yeah, and you'll be perfectly fine for the whole playthrough. By the way, rats have a chance of dropping humanity. So if you actually did want to go ahead and farm for humanity, I would recommend killing a bunch of rats all the time. That's little gate right there is locked right now. We actually can go unlock that a bit later on after going through the lower undead burg, excuse me, because this area is the regular undead burg. Just good old generic undead burg, the first area in the game. We can go roll down these little barrels here. Always recommend rolling into barrels and like little boxes, because who knows what it might end up hiding behind. This is a little dead ends, except there's a little branching path right in this little room, which many people don't really know about, that houses another soul of the lost undead, just 200 souls. There really isn't much that we need in this area. I'm just going to tell you guys how to progress it if you wanted to go grab all the items, just for the sake of like still having it be somewhat of like a walkthrough. But there really isn't much else that we can go get, except for like the other merchant that we did speak to. There was some rubbish. Now rubbish pretty much does nothing as an item itself, but we can go ahead and take that rubbish back to the crow in the tutorial area. Do you know how I mentioned that you can trade in certain particular items? You can trade in the rubbish to go get a titanite chunk, which can actually help you get to a +15 weapon, which is actually a max level weapon. Well, it goes from +10 to +14, and you need a titanite slab to get the +15. I completely messed the attack. And there should be something in this room, though, which is another Soul of the Lost Undead. But now at this point, there is a little section over there, but you can't get there just yet. You can't actually make that jump. You have to go from the top. But here is where the dragon spawns, or where the dragon would have spawned if we were coming here the first time. But we already actually backtracked through this section. But yeah, now we're back here again. That way is to the merchants, which we can go there right now. I'm not going to really like, tell you guys how to fight anymore. I've already like kind of broke down how to fight certain enemies. We have the Drake sword, so we're perfectly fine. 2-hand and then spam against every single enemy. You're going to be okay. But yeah, this is the merchant that I talked about the first time that sells a short bow. Now, in terms of what like weapons he's selling, he doesn't really have much that we really need. Like the Drake sword is better than basically every weapon that we have here. The reinforced club is pretty good, but everything else here is pretty much just outclassed by something else. Like even the shields that he has, like we already have the heater shield. He does sell repair powders. I probably recommend picking up maybe like a couple of repair powders. Probably just pick up the 2, just in case you end up forgetting repairing the weapon. The repair powder can actually temporarily, not temporarily, but actually can somewhat give you a bit of your durability back. I think it's only like 100 durability for every single time you use the repair powder. So probably picking up a couple of those is okay. Pick up the residence key, because the residence key actually does gain us access to the sorcery NPC. If you don't really care about sorceries, there's no need to pick up this key. But now this enemy or this merchant actually does drop the Uchi Katana, which actually is a really cool katana in this game. Probably the best katana in this game, arguably. Gets some of the most damage, gets a decent moveset, and you get it really early on. pretty low requirements. So if you actually did want to go with an Uchi-Katana, which is probably like another top 10 weapon in this game, you can go ahead and kill him. He doesn't really sell anything else outside of like maybe like the Lloyd's talismans that other like NPCs don't already sell. He does like sell the multiplayer items, and I think he actually just drops them when you do kill him. Even the residence key, I'm pretty sure he drops it when you kill him. So we can just go ahead and kill him right now just for the sake of getting the Uchi-Katana. He dies in 3 hits, and he's just going to go ahead and give it to us. Yeah, he gives us a humanity too as well. So yeah, pretty cool. And then there's the Uchi-Katana. So that's pretty neat. I'll go over weapons in a bit. Should be a guy right behind those boxes. We can just go ahead and kill him. We have some more trash mobs along the way, all lined up perfectly for our heavy attack. Oh, the other ones didn't run closer. And I missed. Oh, now I'm sad. The wolf ring didn't come in clutch there. I don't know what he dropped, but I wasn't bothered picking it up. He probably just dropped the broken straight sword, which we already have. So very terrible weapon. But now at this point, it takes us up to the roof. And now we can go ahead and jump to the other side because you have to go for the rooftop to jump to get here. The only thing over here is like a crossbow, and it's a pretty bad crossbow as well. And crossbows are pretty much useless because like regular bows are just going to be better, and we have other options in terms of projectiles that we can go get, namely some spells and pyromancies, which pyromancies in this game can be broken, which I will get into in a bit once I end up unlocking the pyromancy merchant. Don't know what you're doing here, but yeah, now it's going to go continue along the main path. There actually is going to be a door over here that has another useless shield. One cool thing about this game is not only can you just actually open doors, but you can also close them too. Pretty neat feature. Yeah, this bonfire should seem very similar to you. We can go ahead and go up this ladder again to go back to where the bridge is. But we're going to go ahead and go to the first boss, which is named the Taurus Demon. These guys will be showing some firebombs at us, so there's like a run all the way across the bridge. There'll be 3 enemies. Normally, I'd recommend it being a bit like safer, but we have the Drake Sword, so these guys they're dying in 1 hit. We're going to go unlock that door a bit later. This section is actually pretty small. Like most areas in Dark Souls 1 are not that large. It's just like the entire like interconnected world that makes it feel like it is a bit large. But it's like a nice one fell swoop type of motion to go from area to area. The pacing can be a bit off sometimes with like the whole backtracking. It is still really well built. Nice level design. Surely the heavy attack actually works here. It's trying to line these guys up. Come on. Line up. 2 enough is good. That's good enough. The guys with the fire bombs, these guys have a chance of dropping fire bombs too. When it comes to like drop rates in this game, like I wouldn't really rely on them when it comes to like having to farm for items or like picking up items. Can be like some like cool armor sets that will drop, some like random weapons or whatnot. For the most part, there really isn't anything that's too good that drops off an enemy or a boss outside of like the Black Knight weapons, which we'll be getting one in a bit. Let's go kill this guy. Now you normally won't be able to unlock that door unless you have a specific key, but we have the master key, which can like unlock basically almost any door in the game that we really need to. That item there is gold pine resin. Now gold pine resin is a weapon buff that just adds lightning onto your weapon. Now the Drake sword cannot be buffed at all, but if I had the regular longsword, I can go ahead and use the gold pine resin. I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys. Show you exactly how it works, have it equipped. Go ahead and click square on this thing, and yeah. Now, you don't really get many gold pine resin per playthrough. I mean, you can go buy a whole bunch of charcoal pine resin, which is basically the exact same thing, but fire damage. It doesn't give you as much of a damage boost, though. But this thing literally gives you like 120 lightning damage, which can honestly give you just as much damage as the Drake sword. So with the gold pine resin, you can basically be just as powerful, but the buff only lasts 1 minute, and it's basically going to make us just as powerful as using the Drake sword. So we're not going to really bother with that. One other tip as well is that if you do have multiple items in your toolbar, one thing you can do if you just wanted to go back to your ESTUS flask is you can hold down on the D-pad and it'll automatically take you straight to the ESTUS flask. Here is another Black Knight. This one is actually the easiest of the bunch because he only has the Black Knight sword, which like he just has a whole bunch of like just horizontal swipes that you can parry really easily. Just like nothing but horizontal swipes. So this guy's really good parry practice. But just like all the other Black Knights, he actually can hit pretty hard, not as hard as some of the other ones. But same thing applies. If you're not good at parrying, you can just always try and strafe behind him and get a backstab instead. It's a pretty tight place, but we can still get it off. There we go. But T drops a Titanite chunk too, and he has a chance of dropping his sword. His sword is actually really good, just like the Black Knight halberd, because they have really high base damage, and they can be upgraded with Twinkling Titanites, which is really good. Now, one thing is that against this enemy is that if you did get hit and you wanted to like retreat and heal, don't run this way because it goes off like a little dead-end cliff and go up the stairs instead. That ring that we just picked up, the blue Tearstone ring, is practically useless. It gives us more damage negation when we're weak. And when we're weak, we don't really want to be taking any hits anyway. So, yeah, pretty much useless. Not going to use that. Barrel Trap. So go like halfway up the stairs and just go turn back around. If you do end up taking damage, you probably won't die. And if you fall off, you're probably going to fall off on that little ledge, and you can just go ahead and drop down to the other ledge down there, which is like where the Black Knight was. Now at this point, we can go run up straight to the boss, but I want to show you guys how good the interconnected world actually is and go down. But at the bottom of this little tower is going to be another NPC that is a hostile NPC named Havel. Now this guy hits super hard. He hits like harder than like most bosses in the first half of the game. But he's like another enemy that's pretty easy to parry as well. And we have the Drake Sword, so we can make quick work of him, despite having a decent amount of health. Now, pretty much same thing applies. We can go ahead and like strafe a lot of attacks, get backstabs, get parries. In this game, the movesets are pretty basic, so they're only really going to have like, you know, the heavy attack and the light attack. There's no charged heavy attack, so like all the heavy attacks are going to be the exact same speed. So, and you can parry basically any attack that he throws out at you. And it can be pretty simple. But if he does hit you, he will do a lot of damage. He won't one-shot you at this health, but he will end up hurting you a lot. So every single time that you get hit, you're probably going to have to heal. Now, you don't have to kill him if you don't want to, but he does drop a really good ring in the Havel's ring. Now, we only have 2 ring slots, and both of them are already equipped with all like already really good rings, in the Wolf ring and the Ring of Favor and Protection. The Havel's ring does dramatically improve your equipment load. So if you actually were going to go with a build with like larger weapons with heavier armor, the Havel's ring is a must, but it does boost your equipment load by a certain percentage, and a percentage boost at lower level is not going to be that big of a benefit. Once you end up getting like, 30, 40 endurance, the Havel's ring is probably going to be a lot better of an option. And you could actually potentially use that to replace the Wolf ring at a certain point in the game, because with heavier armor, you're already going to have a lot of poise, and you're going to have better damage negation too. But here is back to the Darkroot Garden, or the Darkroot Basin. This is the exact tower that I was talking about earlier, just after we ran past the Black Knight Halberd enemy and picked up the Grass Crest Shield. That is basically just over there. This is what I mentioned earlier. This is like the first area in the game. It routes back around to this section. So yeah, the whole game interconnects very well. Okay, go ahead and go run back there if you wanted to go kill that Black Knight Halberd. That Black Knight Halberd doesn't drop like a regular Titanite chunk. He drops like a blue Titanite chunk, which is like for specific upgrade paths. So for the most part, he's not really that beneficial, but he has a chance of dropping the Halberd, which the Halberd is like honestly one of the best weapons in the game. Just like most Halberds are. I don't like it as much as the Great Scythe, but it actually can be easier to upgrade, which is part of the reason why the Black Knight weapons are really good. Now here is the boss, but just before the boss in this first barrel is going to be a Crystal Lizard. And it'll just die in one hit because, we have the Drake Sword, and that one's guaranteed to drop Twinkling Titanites, and, already picked up a whole bunch of Twinkling Titanites, and there actually is some more that you can get earlier in the game. And as I mentioned, with the regular upgrade weapons, they're going to be a bit more challenging because you have to get things like Embers, where you don't have to get Embers for some of the other upgrade paths. Part of the reason why the Black Knight weapons are really good. Now, we are in the boss room right now, but we're going to go take this ladder up to go kill these 2 dudes because they'll be shooting at us while we're trying to fight the boss, and that's just annoying. Get them out of the way first. Now, the boss doesn't spawn in until we get about halfway, but as soon as you do get about halfway, as soon as you see him spawn in, just turn around and sprint to the ladder. Because one thing that we've actually learned from the tutorial is that we can go ahead and do a plunging attack. So when the enemy is close and nearby and we have like a height advantage, we can go ahead and get a plunging attack. Make sure he's directly facing you, by the way, when you do this, because if he's facing to the side and you get a plunging attack, you actually might have a chance of falling off the ledge. But at this point, to go ahead and like turn the weapon and just like hit him like 3 times, you don't just die after the plunging attack. If you actually wanted to like, enjoy the boss fight and fight him and not just like kill him in like 3 hits, then you can go ahead and do that. It's still going to be a pretty easy fight. He doesn't have that many moves. I would recommend staying on this part of the bridge because at any other part of the bridge, as you can see, there's a lot of like ledges and he can like knock you off the ledge and it's like super annoying. So yeah, he just has like a bunch of like these downward slamming attacks that you can just dodge by like rolling behind him. You can't really block many of attacks like most of the larger bosses in this game. Would I really recommend doing that? There's another salt bucket there in a box. And now we are back at the bridge. This is the bridge where the dragon spawns. We can go ahead and like run here, and I think it will end up spawning in the dragon if I wanted to. But we're not going to really cross this bridge because we've already done everything that we needed to do. But what we're going to do instead is go down here to speak to this NPC, Solaire of Astora. This guy has a pretty cool quest line. If you wanted to, you can kill him for his armor set. Don't really recommend it though, because his quest line is pretty cool. Doesn't really give you anything that's amazing though, but he does give us a white soapstone right now, which the white soapstone is used to do co-op. So if you actually wanted to do co-op and put your summon sign down to get summoned into other people's world to help them fight bosses, you can go ahead and use that item. But what we're going to be doing right now is going to the lower undead BURG. Now this is unlocked via the basement key, which we picked up the basement key all the way in the undead parish before the actual metal ball section. So normally you'd have to go progress to that area and then backtrack to go unlock this door. But being that we did it the other way around, it's actually nice one fell swoop. We already have the key. We can go through here. And we're actually right next to a shortcut because here is the lower undead BURG, which the lower undead BURG is placed, you know, directly underneath the undead BURG. So if I go upstairs, it should lead me to the undead BURG. And that's what it does. And there is the main bonfire, which we already have that bonfire as our last rested bonfire. So we don't need to like rest at it again to unlock it as a shortcut. But you can go rest there if you wanted to. If you're like at lower health and you wanted to save on ESTUS flasks. But we're just going to be going down and clearing out the lower undead BURG, which is not that large of a section at all. But there are a bunch of like really obnoxious enemies. Now, these enemies are incredibly obnoxious if you have no poise because they can like stun lock you. And every single one of like these dog hits can be like stupid and annoying. Now, these dogs actually can proc bleed, which is another status effect that you have to watch out for. There aren't many status effects in this game, namely things like poison and bleed like the only ones. These torch hollows, by the way, they're not going to do much damage, especially with like regular attacks like this, but that charging combo that they get can do insane amounts of damage. Like it can basically one-shot you, even at this amount of health. Like it is just insane. So I recommend the shield blocking, have the weapon deflect off, and then just go attack. Even against like random torch hollows, they could be really dangerous. But this area is basically just a dead end. This leads to some twin humanities. In this door here is going to be that sorcery NPC that I mentioned earlier that we need the residence key for, that we bought off that merchant. We can go ahead and roll into this barrel that actually lets us have another item, which is going to be the sorcery set and a catalyst to help us cast the spells. And we can go ahead and exhaust his dialogue and he'll teleport back to Firelink Shrine to where we can go ahead and buy some of his spells if you wanted to go use those cool blue spells, the pew pew spells. But at this point, it's just like another straight path. Some more enemies will end up like ambushing us. They go open up these doors. If you go progress a bit, they can be kind of annoying. They can actually power you and backstab you. When two-handing the weapon, I'm pretty sure they're going to die in one hit. So not that big of a deal. But these guys can also proc bleed as well with their weapons. So it's something you got to watch out for because if the bleed status effect bar goes to full, we end up taking a flat 30% damage and they can just end up melting you. Now, a bunch of enemies are going to spawn in here, but we have the Drake sword. So what we can do, we can run all the way through. Let's go around these guys. And we can line them all up. And I forgot to repair the weapon. I forgot to repair the weapon. Well, thankfully, we picked up the repair powders. So let that be a lesson. So you notice I was doing like a lot less damage. I was normally killing them in one hit, but now it took 2 hits to kill them. So that's a good thing that it happens. Now you guys know not to do that. Every single time you rest at the bonfire, just repair the weapon. I completely forgot to do that. But yeah, we have some repair powders just in case. But what we can do right now is run back to the bonfire if you wanted to. And there actually is like another shortcut that runs back around to Firelink Shrine down that way. But for convenience sake, we're just going to go use a repair powder. Just the one will do fine. And now we have 200 durability. That should be enough to use the heavy attack a couple times before it ends up almost breaking again. But if the weapon does break, you actually cannot use a repair powder. You have to go to a blacksmith to repair it or back to the bonfire to repair it. So repair powders don't work against broken weapons, only damaged ones. Okay, now this boss is kind of annoying because there are 2 dogs in the boss room and there's a very small boss room. So what I recommend doing is as soon as you enter the boss room, just use the heavy attack straight away. Just use the heavy attack, aim a bit to the left, and you'll end up killing the one dog. But yeah, as you saw, like, as soon as I walked into the boss room, I got immediately jumped. Now, I just recommend just rolling up the stairs just to gain some distance and heal. Just keep running back and forth up the stairs. Try and bait out the other dog. So when he comes close, have the weapon two-handed as well, so your weapon doesn't deflect off the wall. And when the fight's a 1v1 fight, it's going to be a lot more manageable. And you can try and, like, use the ledge to plunging attack him, but it's not going to be as consistent. He only has, like a 1-2 combo. If he starts swinging with his right hand first, it's going to be a 2-hit combo. So that attack, then he's going to do a left swing. For every other attack, it's just going to be 1 swing. So if he starts with the left, it's going to be end the combo. But if he starts with the right, it's going to be another swing. If he does that slamming attack, that's going to be the end of the combo. Then you can attack him there. That was like a different right attack. That one's a bit weird. Not sure what that one was. But yeah, he's not that complicated of a boss, and we have a lot of damage. And he's not going to be like, one-shotting us at this health. And I think we actually can tank attacks as well with the Wolf Ring. So it's not going to be that big of a deal. You'll be perfectly fine. If you die, you can always run back here as well. It's not that long of a boss run back. And you can use the heavy attack to clear them all out at once. Pretty cool. If you really were struggling with this boss, or you feel like you were going to struggle with this boss, what I recommend doing instead is going ahead and killing these two enemies. I see that status effect, that purple bar. If that fills up, that would have procced bleed on me, and I would have did 30% of my health bar. So you got to watch out for that one. But you can run all the way up to the top, and that actually wraps back around to Firelink Shrine. So you can actually go run that way. We're not going to run that way just yet. I would actually recommend doing it now, but for convenience sake and for the video just not, lasting forever, we're just going to go run to this next section to pick up one very important item and talk to an NPC. That's going to be right at the beginning of the section. I don't recommend doing this right now. I'd recommend going back to the Undead Parish. And if you wanted to, then you can come back to this location, which is called the Depths. This is actually an optional area if you have the Master Key, which we did pick up, because typically without the Master Key, you have to get to this area. We have to progress this area to get to Blighttown. But with the Master Key, you already have access to Blighttown. So you don't really need to go through this area, and it can be really annoying as well. With Torch Hollows, I recommend just bring out the shield just in case they do that weird combo on us. But we're literally just going to pick up one item, which is just there next to that butcher. That butcher lady, we're going to go pick up the item there. And it's going to be another NPC just in that room up ahead. We're going to go ahead and kill these hollows first. We're going to go down these stairs. And just down the stairs, there's going to be a dog. There's two-handed weapon. It should kill him in one hit when you have the weapon two-handed. There'll be another dog there. You can go ahead and probably use the heavy attack. Because if you walk too close, you're going to aggro both of them at once. And this guy can be somewhat annoying, but just hold up the shield and then strafe straight to the right. And more likely than not, he's going to miss and you can get a backstab. I don't know why the backstab missed that time. He'll probably do an attack. I have to go straight to the left there because the pillar is in the way. Whatever, he just dies pretty easily anyway. But in this chest is the large ember. You're going to need this ember to actually upgrade your weapon from +5 to +6. Because even if you have the materials that are needed to actually upgrade from +6 to +10, you actually can't do it unless you have the ember, which is really annoying. And that is just only for the normal upgrade paths. So for other weapons that might require different materials like Twinkling Titanites, Dragon Stones, Dragon Scales, and Demon Titanites, those don't actually require any ember. Anyway, we're going to go jump down here. I recommend staying to the left because if you go a bit more to the right, this butcher lady up here is actually going to fall down and you're going to aggro her. You can go ahead and kill her. It's not going to be that challenging. But we're here to go unlock this NPC, the Pyromancy dude. If you don't really care about unlocking Pyromancies, then you don't need to go ahead and free this guy. You can just go run back to Firelink Shrine at this point. But we've got to go free him. We actually don't even need to talk to him to do it. But yeah, now we're going to go ahead and run all the way back to Firelink. It's going to go roll through this water section, through these stairs, which leads us back to this area where the butcher was, and then upstairs to where the torch hollows were, to the beginning of the depths. Actually, it's another item that we walked past, so we can go pick up right over there. I think this is a soul packet. But yeah, now's a good time to talk about the upgrade paths. So the upgrade paths are extremely complicated in this game when it comes to upgrading a weapon. Now, most weapons just require regular Titanite, and are going to need embers to actually help unlock. And most of the weapons that I'm recommending to you guys, like the Zweihander, the Claymore, the Great Scythe, these weapons all require regular Titanite. These weapons are probably going to end up resorting to use. There actually is a merchant right here, which this merchant is extremely useful. They sell some pretty decent stuff. I recommend buying 3 purple moss clumps to fuel those because Blighttown is a poison swamp and you want to be able to cure poison from yourself. There is some toxic there as well. So buy a couple of those, buy a few of those. You can go buy a bunch of charcoal pine resin, what you end up doing switching weapons to something that can be buffed, like the Zweihander or the Claymore. But you don't need to buy it right now because you actually cannot buff the Drake Sword. You can buy a couple of Homing Bones. We already have 7, but it doesn't hurt to buy a couple more. And I recommend buying a Purging Stone if you were going to go through the depths, because in the depths, there are some basilisks that can proc curse on you. And if you die to curse, not only are you going to die, but your health is cut in half. And you're going to need a Purging Stone to cure yourself. Just buy at least one of those just in case. And then we're going to spend the rest of these levels on just the rest of these souls on just leveling up. And also buy a Pyromancy as well, because we unlocked the Pyromancy man. And Pyromancies in this game are extremely powerful, because when it comes to the other spell types in miracles and sorceries, they actually scale up a particular stat. So sorceries will scale up intelligence, and miracles will scale up faith. Since we're here, I actually might as well pick up the Ring of Sacrifice. Tell you guys how to get that. You actually kind of walk off the ledge here to the left side of the cliff. It's actually a safer way than actually jumping across. I recommend just getting to the bonfire first instead of doing this, honestly. But this ring actually, when you have it equipped and you die, it actually doesn't let you lose any souls. But the thing is, that was very dangerous. The thing is, the ring breaks. So every time that you use it and you die, you don't lose any souls, but the ring will actually break. But I recommend using that ring a bit later into the playthrough because it actually is like a scripted death for a particular boss. So yeah, this is the sorcery dude that I was talking about. You go ahead, exhaust his dialogue, and he'll go ahead and sell some sorceries for you if you wanted to. This is the pyromancy guy, which is what I was talking about. So faith is for miracles and intelligence is for sorceries, but pyromancies don't actually scale off a particular stat at all. Let's go ahead and just exhaust all this dialogue, click yes a couple of times. We just only need souls for pyromancies. So as long as you have souls, you can go ahead and upgrade the pyromancy flame, which you're going to need that to actually cast the spells. Every single spell type has its particular catalyst. For the pyromancies, this is called the pyromancy flame. We're going to go ahead and purchase fire orb, which is probably the best option that we have here. Combustion is really good. It's a close range spell, and we already have our Drake sword for close range. So we just want like a projectile option to help complement the weapon without having to use the heavy attack all the time. So fire orb can be pretty cool, and you can go ahead and upgrade the weapon too. The pyromancy flame. It actually can go all the way up to like plus 20, I believe. Or plus 25, like it's like an ascended version of the pyromancy flame. And it requires a lot of souls, like hundreds of thousands of souls. But the thing is, as long as you have souls, you can just get insane damage. So you can actually do some soul farming methods pretty early on, upgrade this pyromancy flame to like plus 10, 15 if you wanted to, and your pyromancers will be doing insane amounts of damage because it works with literally any single build. So I'm going to go ahead and get it to plus 2 right now. There actually is lots of soul farming methods. One of them, there is literally a soul farming glitch out there that lets you get like millions of souls pretty easily and in an instant. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I recommend playing the game for yourself, honestly, when doing it without the glitch. But if you wanted to know about a glitch where you can get like millions of souls, it's called the soul duplication glitch. It's actually different for both PC and console, I believe. I'm not sure exactly how to do it on console. I'm just going to show you if I can actually manage to do it right now. But it lets you literally just use souls. And if you like went ahead and like went to go drop some arrows, and if you had like 999 arrows dropped and you went ahead and picked like a particular soul to actually pop, like if I want to pop this and I go ahead and use all 50 of them, it ends up giving me like a lot more than I would have normally got. Because I only had 3 of those items, but with the soul duplication glitch, I can get like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of souls. And yeah, it's a game-breaking glitch. It really is. So if you really wanted to go that route, you could. For like your second or third playthrough, go ahead and knock yourself out. Go ahead and get overpowered. But yeah, just letting you guys know that it does exist. Okay, but now at this point, we are practically done. We have everything that we really need to do. We have NPCs and merchants unlocked. We have the Drake sword, the Grass Crest shield. We have either a Mask of Father, Child, or Mother. The Wolf Ring, Favor and Protection. Even the Havel's Ring as well for probably later in the game. We have 20 flasks at plus 2. And we have the large ember for when you actually go ahead and want to get a plus 10 weapon. Now, to actually use a large ember, you have to give it back to Andre at the Undead Parish. You give it to him. And if you have a plus 5 weapon, you go ahead and click Modify Equipment, and it can let you get to plus 6 as long as you do have a large Titanite shard. I would actually recommend doing that before you actually do go to Sen's Fortress, which is actually that big gated fortress that was just before where Andre is next to the Undead Parish. Because once you go past that section, it's going to be really hard to try and get back. So I would recommend modifying it, getting to plus 6 before you actually end up leaving for your actual main weapon of choice after the Drake sword. And once you end up getting to Analondo, you can go ahead and buy a bunch of large shards and end up getting a plus 10 weapon that way before the boss in that area, which is Ornstein and Smo, which is one of the more challenging bosses. And using the Drake sword, that's at that point is kind of where you're going to realize where you start to fall off a little bit in terms of damage. There actually are a couple of dragon scales that you can get, which are the materials required for the Drake sword, that you can get a bit beforehand. There's actually a couple, so you probably can get like plus 2 for the Drake sword, which can help you get a bit more damage. It'll probably still end up carrying you for that section, but you probably want to have at least a plus 10 weapon there as well, especially for afterwards. But unfortunately, after that, you're going to need to get the very large ember, which actually is in the New Londo ruins, and that can actually help unlock a plus 15 weapon. But when it does come to other different types of weapons, the Twinkling Titanite path is very easy because it doesn't require any embers at all. And there are lots of Twinkling Titanites in this game. Something like the Astoria Straight Sword is going to be a weapon to where you can upgrade the Twinkling Titanites and the Black Knight weapons too. And I think I end up getting the Black Knight Halberd, the Black Knight Greatsword, excuse me. So yeah, those weapons can actually be very easy to upgrade. I could probably get them to like plus 3 right now and probably end up getting just as much damage as the Drake sword if I wanted to. Now I'm just going to interject really quickly because one thing I completely forgot to mention is the elemental upgrade path. If you might notice by this chart, there is lots of different upgrade paths outside of normal. So if you have like something like a claymore or a great scythe or halberd, you can actually make those things be like lightning infused, magic infused, fire infused. Now the thing is, for most of these infusions, I would basically just ignore them, and like the normal upgrade path might just end up being the best one in terms of damage, and not only really go the elemental paths like magic, enchanted, divine, occult, if I actually wanted to go use certain types of spells, because these might end up giving you like a faith or intelligence based scaling. Now there might be some instances to where you can get more damage with a different type of infusion. Things like a chaos infusion can be really good because it actually does scale off your humanity. So the more humanity you have, the more damage you could actually do. And it will be giving you some split fire damage as well. But the thing is, for a beginner and your first playthrough, you're probably not going to always have at least 10 humanity on hand. So I wouldn't really bother with this path. The only actual elemental path I might recommend going into would be the lightning path, because the lightning path actually does remove all scalings completely, but it just dramatically improves your base damage and gives you a lot of split lightning damage. Which one, there are a lot of enemies in this game that are weaker to lightning damage, and having a weapon with really high base damage means that you can just focus on leveling up your health and your endurance, and you don't really have to worry about leveling up your damaging stats, but you can still actually get a weapon that retains some really good damage. And the thing is, with the lightning path, you still can go ahead and level up using regular Titanite and regular Titanite chunks, which are much easier to come by compared to like the colored variants. But even then, I would still recommend is going with a normal path, because you do get plenty of levels in this game, and you'll have enough to end up getting high amounts of health, stamina, while having lots of levels to spare to put into your damaging stats. And just going with a normal upgrade path is just more versatile, because you can still buff the weapon with different elements. If you were to fight a particular boss, let's just say to fire damage, you can go ahead and use charcoal pine resin too. But when it does come to the particular weapons, the ones that I consider to be the best ones that we did manage to pick up, the Claymore is going to be a really solid pick. This is a basic generic greatsword. Decent moveset. Greatswords have good variation because I have vertical swipes, horizontal swipes, and the one-handed heavy attack is a nice poke, and it is a pretty quick poke, and the thing just does amazing damage at higher levels. The Zweihander is a strength-based one though. This one is probably like the second best weapon in the game. Some people might even call it the best weapon, and I wouldn't even argue that fact, because yeah, this thing hits like an absolute truck. Does consume a lot of stamina, but for a large ultra greatsword, it only weighs 10 units, which is just insane because it can actually get some amazing damage. And its heavy attack is like a pancaking attack. It can flatten enemies to the ground and do like ridiculous amounts of poise damage. Like even like the largest enemies, like the Capra Demon and the Taurus Demon, those bosses that we just fought, every single one of these heavy attacks would literally stagger them, which is just actually insane. The Black Knight weapons are pretty good as well. I like the Black Knight halberd and the Black Knight sword better than the Great Sword. So I'd recommend using those ones if you actually manage to get that. And with the Twinkling Titanites that we did pick up, you could easily get it to like +3 or +4. But those weapons do have a bit higher of requirements. I think they actually have like a 30 requirement themselves. The Uchi Katana is actually extremely good too. Probably another top 10 weapon. It might not be as good as things like curved swords, especially if you actually go with a bleed curve sword, because katanas actually do get bleed, and against some enemies that are weaker to bleed, it is going to be 30% damage when you do end up proccing it, which is really good. It is a dexterity based weapon. It does get the one-handed poking heavy attack. Two-handed heavy attack I do not really care for, because it's a horizontal or a vertical chop, and your vertical chops are already for your light attacks, but it's a quick weapon, easy to use. The major downside of the katanas is that they have pretty low durability, so you have to repair them a lot. The S-Lock can be okay, the Winged Spear can be okay, but that might just end up being outclassed by the Halberd. The Gargoyles Halberd, if you manage to get that one to drop, which is another rare drop of the Gargoyles, is just the direct upgrade for this, and with a pretty similar moveset, I would like to say. I think that the Gargoyle Halberds get the downward slam. I take that back. But this one does get the poking attack moveset, very similar to the Spears. One thing with the Halberds, though, that you might have noticed is that if you miss an attack, you do this like little staggering animation, but if you do connect, it's going to be pretty smooth, and it can output amazing damage. The running attack offers really nice range as well. Like, it's a very easy weapon to use, and I just think they're better than Spears because you get more variation. With Spears, you get nothing but poking attacks, but for the Halberd, the heavy attack is a nice spin to win, so you can actually stagger a lot of enemies at once. You get a better running attack, and yeah, it can just output more damage too than the Spears can. And what I consider the best weapon in the game is the Great Scythe, which actually still falls under the Halberd category, because there actually was no Scythe category in this game. And the moveset is just like nothing but a bunch of downward slams. And same thing applies if you do miss an attack, you do this like little staggering animation effect. But if you do connect, it's just going to be insane amounts of damage. And it has like ridiculous range. It only weighs 5 units. The running attack covers really nice range. The heavy attack also covers nice range as well. Like, it's just an amazing weapon. And on top of all that, it actually does get some bleed buildup as well. And it just gets amazing damage. So like, yeah, this thing is easy to build around. You can use it literally right now, only 14 strength and 14 dexterity. You can go ahead and level it up. The Drake Sword is still going to get more damage because it gets ridiculous amounts of base damage. But once again, once you get a bit later into the playthrough, roughly at around Anolondo, I recommend getting to your plus 10 weapon while after buying those large Titanite shards, and then probably switching to these ones because they actually also can be buffed as well with things like charcoal pine resin or gold pine resin, or maybe even a spell-based buff like magic weapon or a sunlight spear if you end up getting things like those. Anyway, that is basically the entire guide now finished. At this point, I'd recommend going back to the Undead Parish, which is through this door right here up the elevator, and going to kill the boss in that location. And then you can go ahead and elect to either go to the depths, which you can go ahead and run through from that bridge. And with that shortcut that we unlocked, you can go run back there to where it ends up getting the large ember. If you didn't want to go through the depths, you can go all the way down to Blighttown, which is via the Valley of Drakes down at the bottom this direction. And then from there, you can go ahead after killing Quelaag in Blighttown to go through Sen's Fortress after the Undead Parish. And I'll probably have like something on screen to show the actual like area progression as to which areas to go through. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to make an entire walkthrough series. I just wanted to give like a beginner's guide in like the first part of the game to set you guys up, and it's probably help play through the game blind, and it's probably be perfectly fine because you have lots of healing, you have pretty decent damage, you're set up with all the items that you really need to get from start to finish, and you're going to be in a pretty decent spot. Hopefully you know a lot about the mechanics as well. But yeah, that's basically us now done. If you have any questions, definitely let me know down in the comments below. You can also follow me on Twitch because I do live stream basically every single day. So if you actually do want to ask me questions, you can go ahead and ask me there. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next. Bye. See yous.